Oh man. Oh goodness.
All right, we're covering White Fragility, the book.
Yeah, we're a book club now.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Cave of Time book club.
So we just got shout out to Egg White on that intro song there. That was a little change of pace for us. Yeah, it's a little change of pace for us. I'm adjusting the volumes all over right now. I'm just seeing things going in the red.
Do you know Egg White, or did you just throw that on?
No, I don't know him, but well, I feel like I know him.
I read his manifesto.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna turn that down right now.
Oh man.
All right. So, White Fragility, the book. Robin DiAngelo. I think it's kind of ironic that phonetically you could say her name DiAngelo.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't think about that. And the foreword of the book, if you get a certain version of it, is by Michael Eric Dyson.
Yeah, Michael Eric Dyson, I think, yeah.
Michael Eric Dyson, yeah. So I guess that was an afterthought that got tacked on.
Wait, what? You mean the foreword or the fact that her name is
because
is
like
DiAngelo?
the version of the book that I have didn't have the foreword.
Oh,
but I
okay,
know that
okay.
the foreword is in there.
No, I've
Did you
heard
read the foreword?
Yeah, I had the whole thing with the foreword. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, sophisticated book, well thought out, elaborate, full throated.
Yeah. Well written. Very educated woman.
Yeah, I think in many respects it was a good book. For those tuning in for possibly the first time, this is not necessarily the type of book that either Mike or I would normally read. I don't think. I can speak for myself.
No. I mean, not. I read. I get so little time to read. I normally like to read things that I think I will really enjoy.
Yeah. So I had this book. You know, social media has been going crazy with Black Lives Matter these days. So I'd seen this book recommended in various social media feeds, and it's, you know, blah blah blah. It was kind of white noise, no pun intended. But then I logged into Amazon one day and it was like boom, like right there, like Amazon's like, you got to read this book. And I saw it. I just real quick, it was like #1 bestseller and everything. And just with what was going on right now, I felt like it might be a good topic to cover on our podcast and our live stream. Shout outs to the viewers, Andre Nicotina, big shout out. And BitChute. We don't give enough love to BitChute. BitChute, like, our last two episodes have been flops everywhere. I mean, it's not done too well on BitChute either, but yeah, we haven't given any love to BitChute yet, so we love and respect BitChute.
BitChute is our bread and butter, yeah.
I hate the upload process there. It's actually shit. You guys should complain to the people who run BitChute, because I normally have to upload an episode like 4 times before it actually sticks and processes. So the only reason I do it is because we love you at BitChute, and I love what's going on over there. But yeah, moving on. What did you think of the book?
Well, when I first started reading it, I did not like it at all. I was very like, I walked my dogs a lot while I was reading it, and I literally was like, headphones in. I looked like a maniac walking down the street yelling at myself, going, no, what are you talking about? Oh my goodness, this is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah?
What is going on?
Okay.
About
So you experienced white fragility while you were reading the book.
I did. Like, I don't know if you can see my face, but as a person of color, I experienced white fragility in its full brunt in my face. I felt like what it feels like to be a white person who just denies their racism.
Well, it's not only white people that have fragility, and we can get into that later, but go on.
Yeah, well, let's get into it a bit later, because I imagine it's a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So basically about 75% of the way in, I realized, this book really isn't for me.
It's for white progressives, yeah.
It's for white
She
progressives.
explicitly says that towards the beginning of the book that it's for white
Yeah, I
progressives.
must have missed that part.
Oh,
Because like
really?
it didn't dawn on me. I think the first part of the book I was, I was working on other things. There was a lot going on, and I just didn't like hone in on that one part where she said that. But it dawned on me that that's who her audience was, and it
Mm.
immediately made me joyous. I was like, this is amazing, man. These people are getting what they deserve for believing all these silly things. They have to listen to books like this by people like this, and it just must be so exhausting and so, oh, it's amazing. It's
I,
amazing.
I, 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 I totally disagree with you. I, yeah, yeah,
You think
no,
they like listening to stuff like this, eh?
yes, yeah. I think they're deeply fulfilled. Yeah, I think that's the appeal of it. I think they're deeply
Oh,
fulfilled.
oh, it's so good. It's so good. I just love. I mean, we should probably talk about what the premise of the book
Yeah, I
before.
guess. Yeah, yeah. Actually,
Yeah,
I didn't prepare like a kind of summary of it.
yeah,
Could you sum that up for the audience?
yeah. I think I could sum up Robin DiAngelo's
Oh, and
points
could you like
in short
just real
form.
quick because we didn't do that. Like you said that you were gonna look into like the outreach that this book has gotten. Like what
Yes, yeah,
bestseller list is it on? Like what's the reach of
yes,
this? Because this is a bit of a big deal. This girl actually, and I didn't know this until recently. She actually coined the term white fragility. Like
yeah.
this was not a term in circulation before her, and I've heard this a ton since. But anyways, go to it.
Yeah, so this book was written in 2018. It was
Hmm.
published by a small nonprofit publishing house called Beacon Press. Um, if you go on Amazon, it's a bestseller.
Yeah.
It's got 1,900 ratings, 4.5 stars. It's got Goodreads gives
Wow.
it 4.5 stars. This is out of 5,
Wow.
4.5 stars, 37,000 ratings. It's almost 5,900 reviews. That's a very, very well reviewed book.
Yeah.
It has become the number one best-selling book ever for this publisher. There's 75,000 copies as of June 10th. I,
Wait. 75,000. That's it?
sorry, 750,000.
Okay.
750,000.
Okay. Still,
Yeah,
I
I
actually would
actually
have thought it
thought it
was
would be
more.
more.
Yeah.
I thought it would be more, and it might be more because that number is from June 10th. I
Yeah, and
imagine.
there's a lot of bootlegs out there. Not to say that we bootlegged anything, but yeah, you can actually watch this. You can listen to the audiobook on YouTube.
Yeah, but don't because that's copyright infringement.
You wouldn't steal a car, would you?
You wouldn't download
You
a
wouldn't download a
bicycle.
truck.
Yeah, so very successful book. This is if you search white fragility, the next books that come up are Black Kids Sitting Together. Why are all the black kids sitting together? And then the next book is White Rage, and they're all bestsellers, but White Fragility blows them out of the water in
Yeah,
terms
yeah,
of
yeah,
numbers.
yeah, yeah. It's blown up huge right now. I mean, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that these sales are actually below 1 million, but okay.
I imagine it's doing particularly well in the last 6 months, or
Mm.
probably 2, 3 months actually.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and you were gonna give a like just a Cole's note summary
yeah.
on what.
So basically, this is not a book for people who do not recognize systemic racism. This is a book that comes into, like, this is a book for people who realize that we live in a system of white supremacist racist systemic racism, and you have already realized you are racist as a white person. You are
I
what's
don't
the word?
I wouldn't go so far to say that like it is directed to people who think they're not racist to some degree and
Sure, okay,
it
but
just tries to tell them that like no I
her
mean like you think you're a good person like you think you're apart from the people who are racist but you are racist too.
yeah, so her point of view is that you have been conditioned to
Yeah.
be racist through the society that you live in. You are inevitably going to be racist. You're a white person. You probably are surrounded by mostly white people. If you're not, you're probably trying to get out of a place so you can be in a place where you're surrounded by mostly white people. You are going to have all these preconceptions that are positive, white affirming preconceptions. You're going to be negative towards black people just because that's the way you were raised. That's what you've been taught your whole life. That's the way our society works. And being racist is not like a bad good thing. Being
Yeah,
racist is
that was a
is
cool development in it. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, go on.
being racist is yeah, how dare you? As like how could you cut off a person of
Yeah,
color?
there you go. There you go. You're getting into it now. Yeah.
Yeah, so like basically they say that you're not a bad person for being racist, you just are racist, and it's something you need to work on, and it's not something you're going to be able to fix in your lifetime.
Hmm.
You're just going to
Hmm.
have to move from a point of more racism to a point of less racism, and try to kind of get rid of your preconceptions on race and people of color, and specifically black people, who are the like number one target for the society that we live in. She must be talking about American society, like specifically. Um,
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's her focus, but I don't think it's limited to just
it
that.
it's not limited to it, but it's America centric.
Yeah, well, she talks about America exporting their worldview via Hollywood, news media, all that to the
Sure,
world at
sure.
large. So yeah, and
Yes.
she does touch on how that impacts the rest of the world as well.
Yeah, and so like something she would say is like why is it so hard for white people to just accept that they're racist? Every time you talk to them, they protest. They say, "No, well, not me. I would never think this way. I don't see color, or I grew up with people of color. There's people of color in my family. I love people of color. I love black music. I love black art. I love black films. I love black this. I love black that."
Yeah.
But
I mean,
that in
that's part of the
itself,
problem, right? Is that yeah, there's I don't think she ever actually uses the term fetish size, but I've heard that a lot with people who kind of share this perspective. Is that there's like a fetishization of that, and you kind of
I
use
didn't
black
notice
people to
that,
make
and
you feel good.
I actually did like a word count. So a word frequency count on the book, and I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
remember seeing the word fetish even
No,
in
I don't
there.
think so. Yeah.
It might be in there, but it wasn't one of the most prominent words she
But that
talked
is
about
one
for
of the things
sure.
that she talks about is that white progressives use black people to make themselves feel good, and you know,
I kind of don't you kind of get the feeling that she uses black people to make herself feel good?
well, she calls herself a white supremacist. I mean, she says that deep ingrained into her brain is white supremacy. I wasn't expecting to get into this so soon, but it harkens back to the trope of homophobes, like the most ardent homophobes, actually being secretly gay. I don't put too much stock into that. Like I think you can be hardline anti-gay and not be gay yourself.
Yeah.
But I think there is some truth to that. I definitely think that some people who are, very vitriolic and hateful towards gay people are in fact gay themselves, and it's a deep psychological gymnastic thing that's coming through with their hatred to get towards gay people. And it seems like that might be the case with someone like Robin DiAngelo. Like I think this girl might actually, well, she says that she thinks she's better than black people, and she's just dealing with it every day in every way that she knows how, and that makes her better than the average white person, because the average white person, isn't doing that work, and she's trying to teach them how to do that work.
Yeah, I do kind of get the feeling that she just didn't have a lot of contact with black people growing up, and she's kind of old, right? She's got to be like, I think she was born in 1955.
I mean, judging by the looks of her, I would put her at like 50, but I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
No,
we can
no, I
Wikipedia
think
right now.
yeah. Can you pull it up for
Yeah,
a second?
I'll look it up.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna guess she's like 60s, almost 70 years old, maybe 70.
What? Really? Eh?
Just
Well,
look it
she's
up.
held
It'll
up
take.
well. Yeah, keep going. I'll look it up.
Well, that's part of her white supremacist.
Yeah, she was born in '56, so you're pretty much right. She's 63.
63. Okay, so
Yeah.
she's not quite 70, but she's over 60.
Yeah, what happened to
And
black don't crack and white does cracking and all that? I don't know. I don't know.
yeah, she's I just get the feeling from reading her book. It just feels like she really doesn't like black people that much, and doesn't like black culture, and doesn't like spend a lot of time with black people, and she feels incredibly guilty about it, and she wants to find out why. And I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not an
I
armchair psychologist, but
we
like
we
it
haven't
seems like
talked about this
she's
before,
pushing it.
but I kind of got that impression too.
Yeah, it just feels like she's kind of like putting this internal problem she has on the whole world, and
Yeah.
she uses it to justify like, well, this is why I feel the way I feel, because everybody feels like this.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
normal to feel like this. It's totally normal,
Yeah. Yeah.
guys. It's totally normal to be a white supremacist. And can we talk a little bit about how the goalposts have completely been moved for racism? So like when she says
Sure.
racism, she doesn't mean like, she specifically says like, okay, well, if you're going to say you are not a person who hates black people because they're black or thinks they're inferior because they're black, then yes, I agree with you. You're not a racist. But that is not what racism is, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, and on a related note, I should have looked into this before for to prep for the podcast, but Merriam-Webster recently redefined racism after a Missouri woman lost a debate because because she couldn't win under the current definition of racism, and sure enough, within the pages of White Fragility, they have to redefine racism. Language is very important. You need to
Can we
kind of operate within the terms of the language you're
can
speaking in,
we
and
can we can we fucking take a break here for a second? Like,
sure.
okay, if we are going to say that racism is not referring to like an individual acting in a certain way based on his beliefs for a certain race. We are going to
His or
say
her belief, their
his or her
beliefs.
belief, their belief, whatever pronouns they want to use, individual, whatever. We're going to say, like most people, when they think that person is racist, they think, okay, that's somebody who hates black people for no reason. That's somebody who hates brown people for no reason. That's somebody who's one race and doesn't like the other race for not no reason, but like a
Yeah, okay.
non-acceptable
That's I
reason,
was gonna catch you up. Okay,
a
yeah, yeah,
reason,
yeah,
a reason that I don't agree with, right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Which, right? And like you talk to Richard Spencer, and he's like, yes, I like white people. White people are the best. We are better than black
But those
people.
mongoloids, yeah,
Yeah, those octoroons. What did he
yeah.
say?
I know it was octoroons. That was it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So like most people think of a racist as someone like Richard Spencer, right? They don't think of racism as like, oh well, racism is this system. There are a lot of people who think that there is systemic racism, where it's like, okay, well, black people don't get into university as much because they don't have access to good schools, and they don't have access to like having good father figures, and they don't have access to money. Black people are not in good neighborhoods because of redlining. Black people were slaves for a long time, and they're still suffering, and they're still trying to overcome the economic hurdles that were put towards that group of people for so many years, and it's going to take time for them to get over it. There are people who say that there is systemic racism that way, but there's not a lot of people who say like we live in a white supremacist society, and like we are all racist because of how we were conditioned in the society. And it if you think that Robin DiAngelo is a racist, and most people are racist in the way that she is racist, that you don't really think racism is a huge issue in our society, like a big problem. Do you know what I mean?
we're getting into the weeds a bit. You've lost me on. So the first point that you made is that not a lot of people think that we live in a white supremacist society. Is that what you said?
Most people, when they think of racism, they think of like individual racism. This person is racist to that person. This person is racist against that group, right? So like an example of a racist would be like, I'm a boss. I don't hire black people because I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
like black people.
You
That's a
might be
problem.
technically right on most being like over 50%, but I think there's a
Yes.
huge number of people that believe in systemic racism.
Yes. Okay. Yes. But like most people think of it like, I'm a boss. I don't hire black people because I don't like black people. I don't trust them. They're shifty. They steal, whatever, right? That would be an example of something that's like, that person's a racist. And most people would be like, I don't like that person. I don't like what they're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
This is bad. We need people to
yeah.
not think like this in our society, right?
So, like most people's definitions of racism would adhere to the previous Merriam-Webster
Yes.
definition of racism, as
Yes.
opposed to the current one, where it's I
Yes. And
believe it's
so,
privilege plus power now.
yeah. And so, like, that kind of racism incites a reaction in people, an angry reaction in people, where they're like, I don't want to be friends with somebody who thinks like that. I'm disgusted by somebody who thinks like that. I'm opposed to people who think like that. I want to stay away from people who think like that. I don't want my children mingling with people like that. These people need
Wait,
to be
why don't
re-educated.
you want to talk to people like that?
I'm saying most people would say
Oh,
this.
sorry. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Most people have like kind of a disgust towards someone who they would think is racist, right? In this context. And so now she's kind of brought in this word racism, where it's like, oh well, you're racist because you just are, because you grew up in a system where you were conditioned to be racist, you were taught to be racist, right? And so now she's saying things like, you just need to kind of focus on your whiteness and how it affects people around you and how it makes them feel and what you can do to dismantle your racism in the structure within which you live. And she gives a bunch of examples on how to do it, but like, the problem she's defining, it shouldn't be met with the same kind of or wouldn't be met with the same kind of outrage as the other problem, the first problem I described, where you have somebody who is racist. Most people think he's racist and they're upset about it. Like, example, if you have a cop who is racist, who is targeting black people, if you have a boss who is racist, who doesn't want to hire black people, if you have a president who is racist,
Yeah. We get
right?
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, you can't change the definition, but then not change the outrage over the problem of being racist. Like, you'd have to temper your reaction to a racist if we're going to change the definition, right?
Yeah, and that's what's so crazy. I mean, like, so if everybody is racist, the term
Yes.
racism no longer carries any weight. So to that point, I feel like, the far left and what we could nominally call the far left. I wouldn't necessarily call this book far left, would you?
I would say it's pretty just left of center, or
Yeah,
slightly left of
yeah,
center.
exactly. That's how I would put it too. I think
Yeah.
the far right and the slightly left of center book could really shake hands on that destigmatizing the term racist.
Yeah, and if you're going to do this, I feel like a lot of people would be okay with this and say, yeah, you know what? Racism in this day and age means us trying to do a lot of the things that she puts forward. But but then you can't kind of like get outraged if somebody's racist. If you say,
Oh yeah.
hey,
Oh well,
look,
one hundred percent. Like
this
100%.
guy,
If everybody's racist, you can't get racist. You can't get upset if somebody's racist because literally everybody is racist. So that
yeah,
goes without saying. It's a
and then like, if someone drops the N bomb with a hard R, the reaction isn't like, "Whoa, fuck you, man, that's not cool." The reaction should be like, "Hey, why don't we have a conversation about this? I don't think you've considered this viewpoint.
yeah.
Like, you would invite that
Which
person for
I
a."
gotta say, like, I'm kind of on board with that. I like this is one of the topics of the book, and there have been a number of studies done. So there are studies done where babies, I don't remember the exact age range, but we're talking like before they can speak, they associate happy music with people of their own race, like women of their own race, parental figures of their own race, and they associate like sad, scary music with people who are not their race. So this whole like
I
we're
don't
all
I don't know
racist
about
thing, I'm
that
not.
specific study, but I do know you're talking about implicit bias, and
Yes,
implicit bias
yes,
is visible in people at the age of 2, at the age of 3.
yes. I
People
mean,
seem to
as
people
early as you can test, it seems.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would have to brush up on my psych. It's been a while, but I imagine that point is contested. It would
Yeah, it's
depend
contentious.
on how you
Yeah,
test.
it's definitely
Contentious, yeah.
contentious. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So, yeah,
I
I mean,
mean, to sum that up though, that it is from an extremely young age. It's not like it's like age 7 after you've watched MTV for 5 years. Like it's
no,
while you're
it's
in the
it's
while you're in the
it's
crib.
yeah. It's I mean, it might even be genetic.
Yeah,
It might even be it's arguably biological, because
yeah,
it's before socialization, right?
yeah.
That's the word I was looking for before
I
when
can't believe we're still in the summary of the book. Like,
Yeah, I mean, that's if you haven't read the book, I mean, everything we just said basically covers a lot of the book, like 50% of the book. And you could go and look at there's I think it's an hour and a half YouTube speech that she gives at some university that
yeah.
covers most of her book.
Yeah,
It's
she
about
she
50,
actually she actually
75%.
like if you YouTube white fragility, it'll be one of the top results. It's like an hour and a half lecture, and she
Yeah.
pretty much reads directly from a lot of her book. And Yeah, I would honestly sooner recommend that than reading the book because she covers the most important things and she kind of takes it to a next level as far as her tone and expanding on different parts of the book.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot more palatable. The book is kind of the beginning of the book especially is dry. I had to listen on like 1.45 speed or something to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, well, the forward in the first chapter or two, or the first segment or two. I don't remember when it exactly starts at chapter one, but certainly the first couple segments were a little dry. Yeah.
Man, like I'm walking my dog and it's a nice day out and I'm like, oh great, I'm going for a nice walk with the dog and this book is going on and on and on and I'm like, Jesus Christ, man, like how long have I been listening to this? And I look down at my phone and I've been listening for like 15 minutes and I thought I'd been listening for like an hour and I was like, oh my goodness.
No, I mean,
Oh my
I was into it at parts,
goodness.
but yeah, I was listening to it while I was at work, and certainly, there were I had to re-listen to chapters sometimes 3, 4 times because I would just zone out. Um, she gets so this is a very feminine book. Like this book is, I would say,
Mm,
written for women.
this book is totally written for women.
It heavily relies on the reader's maternal instincts and
Yes.
anecdotes and
Yes.
emotional impact, like
Yes.
appealing to your emotions. Uh,
Yeah, and all of her stories are like, I, a woman, was talking to another black woman in a seminar with mostly women, and it's like every time a man comes up, she's like, the man got angry at me, and so I
yeah,
kept quiet and did not engage again.
yeah.
I
I,
felt
I've
it was
I've never
better.
I've never heard anyone talk like this who wasn't a woman, and I've never witnessed a man respond positively to some of the ways that she describes things. It's like, um, you know, this black woman got mad, and me as a white woman, I did not want to make the black woman explain herself, so I went to a white woman who was also very well experienced with racial dynamics, and we sat down, and I poured her a cup of tea with 2 sugars, and I asked her how she felt before asking her for her pronouns, and then you blah yada yada yada. It's like, oh
It's
my
not. That's
god,
not an
just
exaggeration.
like I'm
That
a
is
guy. I'm
exactly how
like
this book is
yeah
written.
yeah 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 yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. So I mean, not to be too gender stereotypical, but yes, she writes for women. She is a woman. She's very. I think she's from California.
How how
Rich
I
neighbor.
how I would frame this? I'm just looking at the top of my show notes. Just like to piggyback on your summary of the book. Um, I would say that like this book is a really good read, because it is one side of the development of race relations throughout our lives. Like we're both in our 30s. I see this as kind of one side in the development of race relations, and what that situation is two tugging sides. One side saying, let's stop caring about race. Let's
Yeah.
let's not take color into consideration.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this side is progressively losing ground to people who believe we should shift our attention to race more than ever. And
Yeah.
that's what this book is kind of encapsulating, is that like, no, we should not stop caring at race. We need to care about race more than ever.
Yeah.
And
So yeah,
I think that
one side.
there's a lot of metrics that we can see that like this girl's side is winning that tug of war.
Totally. One side says race is like hair color or eye color, and the other side says no, race is the most important thing ever.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I wrote kind of like a joke summary. I was going to bring it up as a joke to you, but I think it serves here. So I just wrote here, my notes say anal bleeding. Jason, you are a white supremacist. And the fact that you are trying to deny that you are a white supremacist is insane. Imagine you walked out of home bleeding from your anus. And I said, Jason, you're bleeding from your anus and you need to do something about your rectal cavity. Blood is getting everywhere. You wouldn't deny it. You would say, thank you, Michael. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. My
This is
thank
exactly
you,
how she talks too, by
you,
the way. But yeah,
thank
go
you,
on, go on. Yeah.
thank you for bringing my bleeding rectum to my attention. And you would try to find a way to deal with your rectal bleeding. Now, as a logical person, how can you not do this about racism?
How could you
know you're
expose this
racist.
about me live on air?
Hey, look, you know your rectum is bleeding. I know your rectum is bleeding. In what world does it behoove you to deny and just get angry at me for pointing out that your rectum is bleeding everywhere? And that's basically what she thinks about racism. To white people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the rectal bleeding is much more easy to not deny. You could just pull out a hand mirror and be like, "Look, I don't see any blood." But what she's talking about is kind of deeper and more ethereal than that, right? Like,
Well, so
like,
is the bleeding. The bleeding, you can't see the blood. The bleeding is
well,
deeper.
the thing is that like, and it's circular logic, right? So denying it is proof that it exists.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. The more you deny it, of course you're going to deny it because you suffer from white fragility. You are fragile about it because you were socialized to put your white power on a pedestal and protect it at all costs.
But Mike, I mean, like there is a foundation for this, right? So we've got differential incarceration rates, differential income, differential net worth, educational attainment, health, lifespan, unemployment rate.
Yes. It's racism of the gaps.
Well, I don't know so much about that. Like, so we see these differences, and there is a reason for these differences. We can agree on every single person can agree on that point, no matter where your ideology lies, no matter what you think about anything. We see the differences statistically speaking. We can see them empirically. You agree that the differences exist and there is a reason for them, correct?
I got to go to Devin Tracy. I got to go to Uncle Devin. Devin Tracy coined the phrase.
He's talking about atheism is unstoppable YouTuber. He's got like 100,000 followers or something. He's kind of entertaining. He's not appealing to many people, but yeah, go on.
What's the guy who's friends with Joe Rogan who got kicked out of Evergreen College? Brett Weinstein.
Brett Weinstein.
Brett Weinstein just started talking about this. Just started talking about atheism of the gaps. And so it's basically like you find a situation where white people do better than black people. What's the cause? Racism. Anything you can find. This is exactly what.
No, I'm just trying to find common ground first. I'm not necessarily saying it's racism straight off the bat, but you can see these differences and you agree that there is a reason.
Yeah, but Jason, this is literally what they teach you in first year statistics. They say causation is not causality. They say don't look. It's
no.
obscene.
I'm happy to walk with you there. Just don't jump to just rejecting it. So what are the reasons? What are the you got a lot of brown fragility, #brown fragility right now. We're gonna get into that later too.
They should change it actually to like non-black fragility to make a stronger argument.
Oh no, man! Brown fragility was trending on Twitter last night.
What?
We'll talk about it later.
Oh,
yeah. But so what speculate. What are the reasons?
Well, you'd have okay. What was the first one you said? Prison.
No, I can list them again. This is not an exhaustive list. I just wrote this real quick. But incarceration rates, income, net worth, educational attainment, health, lifespan, unemployment rate. What are the different reasons that you could speculate for that?
Okay, so these are all complicated issues. They are all multivariable, multivariable statistical analysis. They need smart people look at these things and get confused.
Okay, that's why we're here.
We don't have good data on don't have good data. We don't have tons of people that agree on this stuff. Like you have to go through each individual example that you gave, find out what's going on. You would need PhD specialists to debate about it for like months and months and months to figure out like the best analysis for what's going on.
Okay. You're getting out of hand. You're getting out of hand right now. We're not trying to set something in glue. We're not trying to concrete something. We're not trying to build a smooth sculpture. Just what are the possible reasons for this?
There's multiple possible reasons, but it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely that one simple explanation can solve all these problems, can tell you why all these things are happening.
You're jumping. Yeah, honestly, this is fragility right here. I don't know what you're doing right now. I'm just asking you, what are the possible explanations for this? That's all I'm asking.
I mean, we.
Whatever you just
I
did to your
can't.
mic right now, like it was a lot better. You sounded kind of like you were underwater for a bit, but like it just got way better.
It's okay now.
Yeah, it's way better now. Whatever you just did, keep that and go on.
All right. I gotta try not to move. Yeah, I mean, this is why this book does so well, because if you want to have a conversation about these things, you have to
Just
flesh out.
answer the fucking
I
question.
can't answer it in 10 seconds. I
No,
can't
you
answer.
don't need to answer in 10 seconds. Just start answering it and I won't interrupt you. You just haven't started answering it yet.
All right, all right. White people are in jail less per capita than black people. Black people are in jail more.
Yeah.
Black people statistically commit more crimes than white people.
Yeah.
Right? That's a problem. So they're going to be in
Yeah.
jail more. Now, why they commit more crimes?
Well, people argue against that, but just go like if you want to focus on the crime thing, we could do that. But like, let's go with like unemployment. Let's go with lifespan. Let's go with things that maybe
unemployment you could relate to education.
Sorry, you broke up there. You can relate that to what?
Education.
Okay. Yeah,
and what? Do I sound okay now?
Yeah, you sound great. And what about education?
Why are black people less educated?
Yeah.
Because they live in worse neighborhoods. They have less access to
good education. Why do they live there?
Why do they live in bad neighborhoods? Because they are more represented in the poverty scale. So there's more black people per capita in the lower classes than in the higher classes.
And why is that? I don't mean to sound like a toddler, but why is that?
Well, they're not these again. So like, okay, so black people, they have lower rates of parents staying together and father figures. There's a breakdown in their society, right?
Yeah, I really don't want to sound like a toddler, but why is that?
No, that's fine. That's fine. Why? Well, why is that? I mean that kind of comes down to individual choices, right? Like if you are a father and you decide not to stay with your family, that's kind of on you, right?
Yeah, but why are more black fathers deciding to do that? If that is the contention and we accept that it's true, why are more black fathers deciding to do that?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know why.
Yeah, but I'm asking you what the possibilities are. Like what are the possible reasons for that? If it all, like, I'm not necessarily just accepting your rationale for all this, dominoes falling. Like we get back to this base domino. What is causing that base domino to fall?
So why do black couples not stay together to raise children as much as white couples or not?
Yeah, if you define that as, I'm not necessarily saying that is the root, but if you see that as the root, yeah, why? What are the possible reasons?
I'm not saying it's the root. I'm just saying it's one of the issues that comes up, right?
What is the possible reasons for that?
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that that's their culture, right? That's the way they were raised.
And where did they get their culture?
I don't know. That's a complicated question. Like, I'm not sure how cultures evolve and develop and stuff. So, but like if you live in a neighborhood where you grew up in an extended family, your parents didn't stay together, your cousin's parents didn't stay together, your neighbor's parents aren't together, it seems like you'd be more likely to value those things less, right? It seems kind of like if you grew up in a neighborhood where the focus is on the nuclear family, and like, obviously not everyone has a nuclear family, and obviously more and more white people don't have as many nuclear families as they used to, but if there's a focus in your culture on having good father figures, you will value that more. And if you didn't have it, it's hard to value. It's hard to understand why it's important if you've never had it, right? So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like you grew up without a father because you didn't have one, and then you don't value how important it is to be a father. You get some girl pregnant and you walk out on the family for whatever reason because you never had a dad. Nobody ever taught you what the importance of having a dad was. You never got to learn those lessons. It's easier for you to walk out on your family than somebody who said, "Yeah, I had a great dad. Okay, like I've got this young girl pregnant. I'm going to make sure no matter what happens, I'm going to be in that kid's life and try to be a positive thing in that kid's life because, I grew up with a good dad and that's important to me." Right.
So, it could be a cultural thing. And would you say that's like their fault if it's a cultural thing?
I mean, at some point decisions have to fall on an individual. So you can say that individuals are better or worse, in a better or worse position to make good decisions. But at some point, like, you're going to have to make a good decision,
What do you think that
even if you're a
Robin
bad decision.
DiAngelo would answer to that?
I think she would not want to engage me. A, because I'm not white, and B, because I think the things I'm saying would put her in a position where she would feel frustrated with me and just say, I'm going to walk away from this conversation right now. What I'm saying is self-evident, and if you don't get it, we're not ready to talk about
I
this.
don't think that at all. I don't think that at all.
What do you think she would say? What do you think her counterpoint would be?
Um, so okay, like we accept that, like, and this is a framework that I don't necessarily accept, but
Yeah, let's say
we accept.
You're Robin
Well,
DiAngelo, and I'm me.
we accept that like all people are created equal. Everybody's a blank slate from starting point. Like if we put, X black person in Y crib and we put, Z white person in A crib, and we, somehow control for the weather, the geography, the upbringing, and somehow magically do all that. That like the outcomes will be exactly the same. So when we see disparate outcomes, in things that we care about, like educational attainment, your violence in the home, like lifespan, unemployment rates, all these things. If there are disparities between groups in that, then we can blame the world.
Okay, so I'm going to give you two answers. The first answer is for Robin DiAngelo, and the second answer is for Jason. So the answer for Robin DiAngelo is, Robin, I understand that you feel these ways, and I thank you for bringing this to my attention. I really appreciate it. But as a white woman, I don't feel comfortable with you talking to me as a person of color. I feel like these issues should be handled by people of color, should be discussed by people of color, and it's a problem in our community that we need to rectify ourselves.
So
And
you're down with holding the
un-
enemy by their own standards. I don't mean to be a
Absolutely.
white guy talking over you, but yeah,
Yeah. Now,
okay,
as for Jason, I would say, like, the blank slate is not true. You know that the
yeah.
blank
Well,
slate is
that's where I'm going with
bullshit.
this. Yeah,
So I'll take you there. That's fine. So Steven Pinker probably has the most popular book on the blank slate. It's called The Blank Slate, and he just goes through every single reason why we are not all born equal, and we are slaves to our genetics, and we are slaves to our ancestors.
I don't.
We
I
do
mean,
not
like
all have the
that's
same
a funny term
potential.
to use, slaves, but I don't know if people would go that far, even especially not someone like Steven Pinker.
Okay, so we are products of our genetics to an extent that's big enough where it has a huge impact, where we are not all born with the same potential
Yeah,
in every single field. Like, we
yeah,
cannot all sing like Michael Jackson.
yeah,
We cannot all run as fast as Usain Bolt. We cannot all. I was gonna say Donovan Bailey, but if we do steroids, maybe we could. We can. Do you know what I mean? We cannot all be Mozart. We cannot all be Elon
yeah,
Musk. We cannot all be whoever you want to throw in there
yeah,
who's
yeah,
exceptional. We're not all exceptional. We have limits in different areas of our lives, and they are related to who we are the moment we're born. There's no amount of money you can spend on this to fix this problem. There's no amount of learning you can have to fix this problem, and everybody knows this. Everybody knows this is true.
No. I actually didn't used to think that. I never really thought about it hard, but I got like, and that's what's there's so many things to talk about of that, but like, no, I didn't used to think that.
Okay, everybody, you might
I
not
think
have
a lot
thought
of
about
people. I
it.
think a lot of people don't think that. I think honestly, I think it actually be most people that don't think that. Like at least in like North
It's
America.
there is. I will say this. So, like, in the North American culture, where they idolize the individual, and it's America, you can kind of be anything kind of attitude. Yeah, it's not really built into there, where it's like, well, you can't really be anything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They
Oh
say,
yeah.
yeah, like, if you put Rudy can play on the field, he can play football with the best of them, with the professionals. And, like, that's just not true. Like, if you are Spud Webb, you are exceptional. You are the only short person who plays in the NBA. And there's, like, it's not likely if you're as tall as Spud Webb that you can be in the NBA. It just isn't likely.
So
If you're a woman, you can't be in the NBA. You're not going to have the body. You're not going to have the ability to play professional basketball with men if you're a woman. And so, like, we all know this. Nobody is stopping women from trying out for the NBA. Literally nobody.
honestly, for a lot of people I know, that is not a hurdle that they have crossed. Like the difference between men and women, it's like more cultural. Like it's like yeah, like a woman can do anything a man can do. Like literally watch any Netflix movie and they're throwing hatchets at 20 yards and splitting zombies heads in two. I was actually having this discussion the other day. Like watch women throw in real life, then watch women throw in movies. Like in real life, women throw like women, like they throw like girls, and then in movies, like all of a sudden they're like hitting bullseyes and like knocking people on the head with like special like ninja stars and stuff, and it.
Everyone
I
else,
don't think
everyone
I
will say,
don't
but
think I
everyone will
don't
say
think that
things like, "What about Ronda Rousey? Ronda Rousey could kick your
yeah yeah
ass,"
yeah
and it's
yeah
like, yes, Ronda Rousey can kick my ass. She's an exceptional athlete. She is a fantastic, hardworking, strong, powerful woman, but she's not the number one MMA fighter on earth because she can't beat up 500 men or more, right?
yeah yeah
Like she just, and it's not like there aren't sports where women don't dominate. Like there's that long distance runner that Joe Rogan talks about all the time. She runs these ultra marathons. They're like 200 miles long, and if there's been 10 ultra marathons in the last I don't know cycle of their running, she's won 8 of them, and she beats all the men. And like it's not like every single metric stops women. Every single in every single sport, women can't beat men, but it just like on average, on the norm is that there's some things that women just can't do better than men, right? And that's
yeah.
just a fact. There's no amount of conditioning you could do to make them better than the men.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like some people would disagree with you. One of the things that we're kind of touching on, which I think is important to this book, is, and you hear like, because I've paid somewhat close attention to a lot of these like leftist discussions, and the one thing that they kind of say routinely is like, we need to have an honest discussion about race. That's what they say. Like, and like she says this in this book, right?
Well,
Like
I'm not sure.
why are sorry, go
Go
on.
ahead.
Well,
Well, you go ahead.
she's like, why are white people so uncomfortable to have an honest discussion about race? And and like yeah, you could say like honest, and you could have like your own points about well, these are the parameters of what that discussion entails. But if you want to see what an honest discussion about race looks like. And this discussion couldn't even happen today. But if you want to see, okay, you're not allowed to say that, and how that actually interacts with the public, just Google or YouTube the Philippe Rushton Suzuki debate at University of Toronto. I think it happened in the 90s. That couldn't even happen today. This guy got like booed off stage. Quote from Suzuki: "What has to be done is action against scientists and academics. His claims must be action by scientists and academics. His claims must be denounced, his methodology discredited, his grant revoked, and his position terminated at this university." So you can see that if you have some perspectives and you voice them, that you risk your social standing, your job, your employment, your your domestic relationships, your income. So that might be one reason why some people don't feel very comfortable having. You'll get demonetized from YouTube. We got to kind of walk on eggshells. Like I feel like we won't say anything that, like, as long as we phrase everything in the proper way, we're not gonna step over the line. But we are walking on eggshells as far as literally getting banned off of off of YouTube. Certainly, we wouldn't be able to be monetized for having conversations like this. So, this whole honest conversation about race thing is a little a
Yeah.
little cheeky to actually suggest that, like, well, why would why would anybody be uncomfortable about doing this? It's white fragility. There's actually good reason to be uncomfortable.
There's a very good reason. It's not, and if we want to live in a world where races are all united and we have a diverse society, it's not in our best interest to point out the differences that we can't do anything about between the races, right? Like the disparities that are, if the disparities are things that we can solve with money and policy and thinking and conversation, then yeah, that's great, like let's get to changing them. But if we actually like have an honest conversation and we want to start doing science where people are going to look at why there are scientific, what are the scientific reasons for differences between races and how they do, and if it doesn't come out, or if it comes out that it's tied to genetics, it's gonna be bad. Like it's gonna be fodder for white supremacists. It's gonna be fodder for people who we don't really want to run multicultural societies, right?
Yeah. And one of the other crazy things about people from this perspective, and she talks about this in the book, is that being an ally or passive interlocutor is no longer acceptable. You need to be an activist. You actually need to. You don't need to be. You can't be like unsure on the sidelines and being like, well, I don't know. I'm going to see how this plays out. Blah 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 blah. Like, no, you need to be. You need to be on board with them, active, anti-racist, as they put it. Um, and
I think there's a big problem we're gonna have. Let's say we become colorblind, right? Let's say that race becomes hair color, and we racial identity is no longer important,
yeah.
and we start looking at people as individuals. Um, then it doesn't really matter if you do an IQ study and you say, oh, well, people with red hair have lower IQs than people with blonde hair.
Yeah.
People with blue eyes have lower. No one's going to do those studies.
I was actually gonna
No
bring
one's
that
going
up.
to do those studies, right? Because no one will care about that kind of thing. But we will have to have then a conversation about IQ, based on individuals, not based on groups of people. But we will have to group people by IQs and say, okay, well, people with IQs in the 60s and the 70s are not as capable of doing things that people in the 120 IQ range are capable of doing. And what do we do about these people? How do we deal with these people? Like if you look at the prison population and do IQ of people in prison versus IQ of people outside of prison, I would not be surprised if you found a disparity there. And like,
Almost certainly. I mean, we do know it's not even contentious that IQ can be affected through like nutrition, education, and all that.
sure,
But
sure, sure.
it's not like it's totally malleable to the point where you can bring a 60 IQ person up to a 130 IQ through good nutrition and education.
Yes, the potential IQ is not infinite. The potential IQ has a cap, right?
Yeah.
It's tied to genetics somehow. And
This is well, what you're saying is actually very contentious, though.
yes, I know
Yeah.
people don't like to hear this. I
Yeah.
know people do not like to hear this. And to be honest, if you're an average IQ person, average in North America is something like 100, right? You might not be smart enough to look at the science that explains how IQ works. It might be too difficult for you to look at the statistics and
Really?
understand them. It's
You
not
think at
easy
you
to
think at
understand.
like
It
100
is
IQ? Yeah.
not easy. It is not easy to. Well, I'm not saying that number is too low, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
uh,
It's
there
not simple.
there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of people. If the average IQ is 100 and we go one standard deviation down to 85, there's a lot of people below 85.
Oh
It's not.
yeah,
It's
and I've heard studies suggesting that like you can't even really understand how the mind works a standard deviation away from you. So like above or below, it's like it's like you do not you cannot even comprehend why they don't understand something, and also above you, you cannot even comprehend the complexity of their thought.
well, you can. Yes, I was gonna go off on a tangent, but I'll stop. So Yeah. So
Well,
if we move to the world where we don't care about race, it's just like eye color, it's just like hair color. It doesn't really solve a lot of our problems. It just reshuffles them in a different light, right? We're still gonna have the people who are poor and committing crimes living together in the same neighborhoods. We're still gonna have high violence in Chicago. We're still gonna have people. It's like, okay, well, why is there such a disparity between these kind of people and those low IQ people and high IQ people in Hollywood, in representation, in companies? If we decide to do it by IQ instead of race, we're still going to have huge disparities, right?
I also think that we're kind of drifting off into our own zone right now. The point I was trying to make is
Yeah.
that, well, I think that given the foundation that we're blank slates and that race is actually not real. It's merely nothing more than a social construct, which is popular ideology right now.
Yeah.
I think that this book actually builds on that foundation in a very sound methodological way. And if I grant the foundation as solid, I actually find myself more or less agreeing with most of the things that are said. For me, I just don't think the foundation is solid, and I think that a lot of people,
Yeah.
potential listeners, would disagree with that. They would say that foundation is
Totally.
solid.
Totally.
But
Totally.
so
If you agree,
I actually linked in the description. There is a an article that I wrote a long time ago, and I showed you this article. But it's actually fairly well sourced. I mean, like I've taken courses in genetics and whatnot, and I reference a lot of studies, but I don't think that the average person in the Western world even agrees that genetics play a important role in who we become. So I was just going to run down like a couple things that we kind
yeah.
of know right now. So
Yeah.
we see moderate genetic influence on sexual orientation. A large portion of our ability to learn is defined by our DNA. The likeliness of sex offending, impulsiveness, and self control and antisocial behavior are all linked to genetic factors. Neural imaging shows an extremely strong correlation between shared genes and the structure of the brain. This is linked to antagonism, tendencies towards violence, crime, psychopathy. ADHD can be considered 70 to 80% genetic. Genetics could even have a role in one's likelihood of smoking and the amount of smoking done once initiated. Neurons transmit signals despite the individual's experience. Well, I don't want to get too much into the weeds on that, but twins separated at birth grow up and share remarkable similarities. And again, you can it's in the description. You can
Yeah.
click on that link, and I've actually have footnotes that you can click on the studies for this. Siblings who grow up together show no more similarities than those who grow up apart. That's crazy. Siblings who grow up together show no more similarities than those who grow up apart. Adopted siblings who grow up together are no more similar than pairs of people plucked at random. So
Yeah.
it is blatantly obvious. It is beyond scientific fact. It is a scientific fact. It is unarguable that we are not blank slates, and genetics
Yeah.
play a very important role in who each of us was, is, and becomes.
Yeah. And even standard mainstream psychology is not never denies nature. It's always nature versus nurture. How much of each? It's never none of one and all of the other. It's always what is the balance? How much does nature affect it? How much does nurture affect it? There's almost nothing that you can study in psychology where it's 100% nature. I can't think of an example where it would be 100% nature or 100% nurture. Um, Even if something as simple as like how tall are you going to be, like there are ways to stunt growth
Oh yeah. Oh
through
yeah. Yeah.
nurture, right? Something as simple as that. The color of your hair you can change because of things that happen to you during development as you're growing up because of your environment, right?
Yeah, and like fast twitch muscle fibers too. There's
Yes.
so many things where yes, the environment, your nutrition, things like that play a role, but genetics are also hugely defining of these
Yes,
things.
yes, yes. Well,
So
that's what I'm
that
saying. I'm saying yes. Go ahead. We
well,
agree.
that
We
that's
agree.
just the first hurdle. Like this is not a hurdle that everybody accepts as true.
Yeah, yeah.
There's another hurdle, and this one is way more difficult. Okay, so we've had kind of like the death of race in the Western world. So we'll go with this. So this is a quote. The classification into races has proved to be a futile exercise because all populations or population clusters overlap when single genes are considered. And in almost all populations, all alleles, I guess that's kind of like groups of genes, all alleles are present but in different frequencies. No single gene is therefore sufficient for classifying human populations into systematic categories. That's Stephen Jay Gould, who was
Yeah.
basically the Bill Nye of evolutionary biology.
Yeah, yeah.
So basically, like succinctly, he says like there's not a single race gene. That is, there's not a gene present in all members of one group and none of another.
Yeah,
So
of course.
I don't feel
Yeah.
like I don't feel like because you hear this ad nauseum is that like okay and it can be phrased in very different ways. So some people will say race as a biological term is invalid, or they might say there's only one race, the human race. Or they
Yeah.
might say, I mean, anything in that realm. I'm sure everybody can pluck like different things that they've heard in their own experience. I don't think that they understand what could be said to be true about that statement. I'm not saying it's not true, but I don't think that people who make those statements understand what could be said to be true about those statements when they are making them. So the scientists that are arguing that race is biological are saying this, and I might have to repeat this twice. Like you listen out for me and tell me if I need to repeat it twice. The
Yeah.
scientists who argue that race is biological are saying this. Although there are no phenotypic traits and genes present and exclusive among all members of any given race, different races have different frequencies of particular phenotypic traits and genes. Therefore, race exists biologically. Now, the scientists who argue that race is not biological are saying this. Although different races have different frequencies of particular phenotypic traits and genes, no phenotypic traits and genes are present and exclusive among all members of any given race. Therefore, race does not exist biologically.
Yeah,
Did that make
you should.
sense?
Yeah, you should dumb that down a bit because it's a lot to swallow. I didn't really follow it, to be honest, 100%. Could you go through it
So
again
basically,
and we can talk about it?
yeah. So I'm gonna dumb this down in a way that I did in a previous podcast when we were talking about when we were talking about social concept or social constructs. So I
Yeah.
talked about the difference between a stool and a
Yes,
table,
a chair.
right?
Yep.
Well, let's go with stools and tables because
Schools and
it's
tables. Yes,
basically
yes.
there
Yeah.
is no dividing line between a stool and a table. You can have a stool that is bigger than any table that's ever existed. You can have a table that is smaller than any stool that has ever existed. You can sit on a table. You can eat dinner off a stool. Literally there is no application. There is like you can have a stool that is like this is the exact same as a chair.
Yeah.
The
But a stool is a
dividing
stool.
the
A
dividing
table is
line
a
between
table.
these two is a social construct, but
Yeah.
nonetheless there are realities that if you take everything that we call a stool and you take everything that we call a table, there are trends that we see between the two categories. Generally speaking, a table is going to be bigger than a stool.
Yeah,
Generally,
I was gonna stop you there because you could have a stool that is also a table. You could have a
yeah.
blurred line on that where it's
Oh
both.
yeah, there like that's what I'm trying to say is that there is and that's what scientists like I've read this like in previous years I read into this quite extensively, and that is what the argument like is that sorry, I got people staring at me in a window right now. Um,
Are they
that
sitting on
is
stools or tables?
they're standing actually, which is totally throwing me for a loop. But the argument is that there is no clear defining line between anything that you could say is race A or race B. So then they say, and this you could say logically follows. Well, okay, the dividing line, we cannot clearly define it, so these groups actually don't really exist, and they're all one and the same. But it is the same as saying there are no stools or tables. There is only furniture.
Okay, but
That
can you
that
bring
can
it
be said
back
to be
though to the
true.
can you bring it back to the like? I understand that argument. Can you
Yeah.
bring it back to
Okay. So
the
so
phenotype, genotype?
so like genetic complexity is so much so that you can have a two, let's say, like Europeans, probably even British, but I don't know how similar different groups within Europe are, but let's just go with actually two Europeans. You can have two Europeans and you can study their genotype,
Yes.
so their collection of genes, and
Yep.
genetic complexity is so wide and varied that if you take those two Europeans and compare them to one another, each one could, instead of actually being more closely related to each other, one of them could actually be more genetically similar to an Asian, someone born in China. Um,
Yes.
so
So how would that happen? Like, how would that happen? How could somebody who lives in the same neighborhood, they're both white, they're both in Britain, how could one of them be more genetically related to an Asian person than a British white person?
I mean, well, I've only taken minor courses in genetics
Yeah.
and studied and read like a bunch of papers. So that's my experience with it.
Yes.
I would dumb this down into a very absurd realm where think about it as Plinko chips, and you have different Plinko
Yep.
boards. If you have a different probability of outcomes, and when I say Plinko, this is a Price is Right game where you drop a chip into a slot machine basically, and it bounces down different. It
It would
basically
it would be that like large sections of their genes must look more like Asian people's genes
Yeah, 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 yeah.
than people who live in the same area as
Yes,
they do.
yes. I
And they
mean that's
must,
how.
and would that be because they have ancestors from Asia, or would that just be genetic randomness? Why is that? That's what I
I
was
think I
unclear
think
on.
it's genetic randomness to some degree. I mean, we
You
are all like distantly related. Um,
yes,
and to take it a step further, you could say there is no species. There is only one species, and that is the
yes.
species of life. Like it is. I mean, that's
Well, okay,
approaching the
so
realm of
some
absurdity a bit more, but
I
it's
think
a
we're kind
similar
of
statement.
I think we're kind of talking out of our wheelhouse here, but there's some interesting points for the layman to understand. Like you share something, some absurd portion of your genetics you share with all living things on Earth. So if you look at something like a plant, a banana, for example, you might share, and I'm not sure this number is correct, but you would share 50% or something of your DNA with a banana.
I think it's
And it's
actually
not
more. I
because
think it's actually more with bananas. Like we are
sure,
actually
but
fairly genetically
the
similar.
reason is because like all of the replicative systems and all of the cellular structures and stuff, they're all dictated by DNA fragments that are shared among everything that is alive, right? Only things that are alive have DNA, right? So there's in the evolution of life there's so much time. We're talking about huge swaths of time, and for most of that time we are very similar, and it's just in the last little tiny bit of
It's a
time where
little bit
we've
of time. It's like we're talking like 60,000 years.
well, if we're talking about human beings, I think the numbers
Oh,
Richard
sorry. I
Dawkins
thought you were
quotes are
talking about
between.
the dispersion from Africa.
Sure, if we're talking about just human beings, Richard Dawkins would quote numbers between 100,000 and 250,000 years. 250,000 years would be the long end, and 100. This is a very short period of time, right? So you could share tons and tons and tons of genetic similarities with a snail or a fish or any other animal you could think of, right? Um, but I'm just trying to. I want to bring it back to the complicated thing you just said,
Okay.
and then I want to bring it back to the book because I feel like we're way off on a tangent
Yeah,
right
well,
now.
let me just say, like throw a little red meat in the air. Like
Yeah.
the people who say there's only one race, the human race. I said
Hmm.
that I don't think that they understand what could be said to be true about that statement, and I wonder if they are aware that white people have Neanderthal DNA. Black
Mhm,
people do not have Neanderthal DNA.
mhm.
Asian people have Denisovan DNA. So these are different strains of Homo sapiens. I mean, I don't remember the exact grouping, but these are not well, they're Neanderthals. They're Denisovans. This is interbreeding between what we generally know to be as different subspecies, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think that they are even aware of that, and that is a fact that I was shocked actually when I was looking into this, and I think some people who are shocked, or some people who are listening, might be shocked at as well. But do you think that people who say like there's only one race, the human race, would be aware of that fact?
Um, yeah, I imagine that there's genetic scientists that say there's only one
Yeah, but I mean the average person.
race.
Oh, you're breaking up a little.
Well, I think the average person in general just doesn't have. Sorry, can you hear me now?
No, you're good now. We just
Am
have
I
a
good? Or
delay.
is there connect?
Yeah, yeah, we just
Okay.
have a bit of a delay, but go on.
Okay, so I'll try to do the best of this with the delay. But basically, I think that there is only a handful of people who have a strong grasp on what is going on with genetics and how it relates to the evolution of human beings. Like we're talking about very complicated science over. You're going to tie that now into like culture and what's going on in everyday issues and stuff like that. Like
No,
it's
why
whew,
it's
that
important?
is
Why it's important is that I don't think that there is any defense to some of the conclusions that someone like
Robin DiAngelo.
Robin DiAngelo makes. I think if you accept her foundations as true, then so many of the things she says naturally follow. And I think she's very sophisticated and well thought out if you accept the foundations as true. But
Yes.
in order to combat that, you need to like tread this very taboo area where when we see outcomes in areas that we care about, like incarceration rates, like educational attainment, all of those things, if you accept that different groups of people that we colloquially call races should, all else being equal, be attaining the same outcomes in every area we care about, I mean, I guess I don't even remember where I started that sentence. But
No,
if
well,
you accept her foundations as true, what she says somewhat naturally follows, and you need to actually tread on areas where you're going to get called a racist, a bigot, blah 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 blah.
I think it's difficult to bring in hard science into these conversations because all of these conversations are being dominated by social scientists, and they most of them do not have a background in hard STEM science and biology and physics and genetics and things that they're talking about things that a lot of them do not have a grasp on. They don't understand. I don't have a strong grasp on this. I don't have a PhD in genetics. I have a very basic Bachelor of Science degree, and it's easy for me to look at someone like Robin DiAngelo and be like, this woman clearly does not study genetics. Like, she obviously does not study genetics, right? And so, unless you're like God Sod, unless you are somebody, Philip Rushton, David Suzuki, even like, unless
I
you
would not
understand
put your horses on
David
Rushton's
Suzuki.
cart unless you want to get banned off YouTube.
No, but I'm okay. I'm just saying. I'm not saying I agree with his points or I disagree with his points. I'm just saying it seems like the kind of people that study race and social science are not the same kind of people that study genetics and population distributions and IQ
Yeah.
and things that other things how genetics relate to success is not studied by social scientists, which talk about race and success.
So we'll have to leave this part in. We just
Yes,
had a
yes,
huge delay in it was tech issues, a lot of tech issues just now. They're trying to shut us
yes,
down. They cannot take the message. They cannot handle the truth that is coming out in the Cave of Time
yeah,
podcast right
yes.
now.
We are under attack. We are
We
under
are
attack
we are
by
under
the
attack.
Clintons, the Illuminati, the big
I
banks.
I do not feel suicidal at all. I do have information that will lead to the inevitable arrest of
Yes,
Hillary
of
Clinton
Jeffrey.
and the entire
Yes,
Clinton cartel.
yes, yes.
But I am
And
not
it's you.
suicidal.
Yeah,
And if the
I'm not
internet
suicidal.
connection goes out one more time, you know that everything we have said thus far is true.
It's true. It's true. It's that we are speaking the truth, and that is why we are speaking truth to power. Is what's going on here.
Yeah,
Whew, all right,
we were really into that.
let's
Yeah,
try and
just
pick back
try to
up.
get
Let's
back
try and
into it.
pick
Like
back
pick
up.
me up because I've been stuck and trying to deal with this. So yeah.
Yeah, so basically, like people who study social science, they're not equipped. They do not have the scientific background. People in the public sphere do not have the scientific background to talk about what they're talking about. They're talking about it from a sociological point of view. They're talking about it from anecdotal evidence. They're talking about it from a liberal arts point of view, right? The people who talk about this woman, Robin DiAngelo, like she's not a PhD in genetics. She is a doctorate in some liberal science degree, right? So like I don't feel that the people who talk about this stuff are qualified to talk about it, and the people who are qualified to talk about it won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Like they will not get involved in these kinds of conversations, right? You saw what happened to Philip Rushton when he tries to
Well, no,
talk about rape.
I think they'll toe the line that I defined before is that it's not untrue to make those statements. I just think the general public is not aware of what is true when they make those statements. Like when you say something to the effect of race is nothing but a social construct. That's all it is. I don't think that they know what's true about, or what could be said to be true about that statement. I mean, to be honest, I think it's misleading to say something like that, but I don't think they understand. And I think that a lot of the scientists that you're talking about, they will make that statement because it is safe to make it. And they get lauded for making it as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, what do you think? Do you think race is a social construct?
Yeah, in the same degree that stools and tables are social constructs. You know, like you could
So,
say that it's
okay,
all furniture, and there's there are no stools, there are no chairs, there's just furniture.
let's try and bring it back to the book. We're so far off topic. We're so far on down this rabbit hole. Robin DiAngelo, she does not talk about race as a social construct. She talks about race. Race means you are. I mean, I don't even know what she thinks about race. I would be so curious to see what she thinks about someone like Sean King. Like, is Sean King black in her eyes? Is that a black person? This is a person that looks white, could talk as a white person, could pass as a white person. Like, yeah, okay, he lives in a black community, but he's raised by white people. He's raised by a white mother. He's raised by a white father figure.
Yeah.
Is does he count as a black person
So
to
I mean,
Robin DiAngelo?
the common argument from people who are like I haven't heard exactly what Robin DiAngelo would say about that, but there is a common argument from people who share her perspective that like yes, you can experience like the black experience to a certain extent, like Sean King does. But the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is that Sean King could drop it all on a dime, and he could grow his hair out, pick up a surfboard, start saying "Hey, dude," and tan a little less, and all of a sudden he would pass as white, whereas the average black person cannot do that. So he is not in the same position that they are, and therefore does not have the same experience that they do.
But but then what would she say? What do these people say about black people who pass as white people? Do they like?
Yeah, yeah, it would be the same thing. Yeah,
But then how can you say how could you say it's I'm sorry, Sean King. I know you're transracial. I didn't mean to say you were not black. I'm sorry. I apologize. But how do you how do you fit these people into your white power um, social construct? Right? These people have a white supremacist society that they live in, and they want. If you live in a white supremacist society, wouldn't it favor people who look white, who are black?
yeah.
But and then at the same time, she would say, no, these people are oppressed because they are black, right?
No, I think that she would agree that if you can pass as white, that's a different situation.
Okay, so then she would probably say something like, "Well, isn't it a bad thing that they have to pass as white?
She
That
doesn't.
they
She doesn't. She mentions in the book. Actually, I was actually very insulted. I didn't think that she would touch on it, but there is a chapter that is on biology, and she talks about genetic basis of race, and she doesn't get in too much into. I was actually hoping that she either wouldn't touch on it or get into depth about it, but basically she just kind of says there's no basis to it whatsoever. So from that perspective, if you can pass one way, I mean that's what it is. Like if you can pass as white, you're as good as
you're white."
white. Yeah,
Yeah.
because there is no biological reality to it from that perspective.
Yeah, maybe we should try and switch gears. Like I saw some tweets you sent me earlier that the Yale ones. Did you want to throw some of that stuff up?
Oh no, I didn't plan on it, but I can. Yeah, what do you want me to pull up?
Well, there was Yale. These people want Yale to change the name of the university.
These are
Is that real? That's
trolls.
not
No,
real.
these are
Oh, they're
trolls.
trolls.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
okay,
I
okay. I
it's
was
it's funny, but yeah, no. Apparently, the University Yale or the College Yale is named after a famous slave trader. So there's a lot of right wing trolls that are trying to
okay.
get Yale to change the name, or at
is that
least
true? Is that true that Yale is named after a slave trader?
I took that on faith. I assume so. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, the troll doesn't make much sense if it's not. Yeah.
and I mean, guess with what's happening today, people are tearing down statues of George Washington, of
Oh
Thomas
yeah.
Jefferson, of
Christopher
um,
Columbus. Yeah.
Christopher Columbus, and uh, there's a couple things I want to touch here, but I'm just going to go into this first point. So there's this kind of idea right now where people judge people from the past based on morals of the present, right? And so they're saying things like, in Canada, I've seen a lot of people who say like, we need to take down statues of Wilfrid Laurier. He was a racist. Had slaves. They're saying the same things about Thomas Jefferson. They're saying the same things about George Washington, right? So I just have in my notes here, like, there is going to be a future where we will be monsters for not being vegan. We will be monsters for wearing Nike clothes that were made in sweatshops. We will be vilified as monsters for
Yeah.
using iPhones or
Yeah.
computers which have conflict minerals built inside of them.
Yeah.
There's plenty of cases that you can come up with that it's just inevitable that like the people in our future will look down at us for. So the example I have right now is I live in the Dominican Republic, and I'm sure I'm sure you can think of an example that's similar in your town or in your province, country, state, whatever. There's this guy named Vladimir Guerrera. He's a baseball player. He is his son plays for the Jays right now, Vladdy Jr. Everyone loves him. He's a big popular star. But Vladimir Guerrera is a millionaire here. He lives in a town next to like 40 minutes away from my town. And this guy is worth something like 10 to 15 million dollars. He sits outside of a regular store, drinks regular beers, he wears modest clothing. He runs huge projects for poor people. He owns a chicken farm, and every Christmas he goes and gives like all the poor people in his town a free chicken and food and rice and beans and stuff. He makes sure they have food. He's a hero. He's an absolute fucking hero in this town. Everybody loves him. Everyone thinks he's amazing. The work that he does for poor people is amazing. Like, it's absolutely fantastic. But it's totally possible to envision a future where people are tearing down a statue of this guy saying like, this disgusting motherfucker owned a chicken farm where he tortured animals to death. Like, he
Oh, yeah.
completely tortured them to death. And it's like, what does that, is it fair to look at people from the past and judge them through our current moral lens? Is this a bad person because he does these things
He
where,
subscribed to the norm belief system of back then. Yeah.
yeah, like there's no way for this man to know that it's evil to be a vegetarian, not be a vegetarian, right? Like, it's not. And he is like would fit into Robin DiAngelo's framework of like an he didn't grow up educated. He's a
Just
person of
just to some
color.
people who might not even know what we're talking about, like we know that in the not too distant future there will be lab grown meat. You could eat
Yep,
the greatest chicken breast you've ever eaten, and it will
yep.
be constantly reproduced as the greatest chicken breast you've ever eaten genetically in a lab. There will be no good moral reason to eat anything but lab grown meat.
Yeah, and we probably, and it will be cheaper and more widely affordable, like
And
accessible.
it'll taste better. It'll be more nutritious. It'll be cheaper. There will be pretty much no good reason to continue to eat uh, animals that are actually grown in a traditional way.
Yeah, so I mean, like, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna tear down Vladdy's statue? Are we gonna rip down his family home, burn it to the ground? Because you know, we'll be talking about his grandkids in the future. They'll probably live there, right? And they'll probably carry on his charity and his foundation and continue to do things for the poor people. Are people going to criticize his future grandchildren because he owned a meat factory or a meat processing plant?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't find this particular topic too interesting. I mean, I don't know if you do. Some of our listeners might, so we can go into it a bit further. The argument is, why not? Like, why wouldn't you? Yeah, the society that you live in stands for different values. Yeah, why not tear down the statue? That's not what we represent anymore.
Yeah, no, I think there's a big problem there. I think there's a big disconnect with understanding the history of humanity, understanding the history of what went on. No, you do. You disagree. You disagree. I see you
No,
shaking your
that's my
head.
allergies. Like I was rubbing my nose for the podcast
Your
listeners, but
allergies disagree with me. Your
yeah.
allergies. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just seems so absurd, right? People tearing down these statues of even Confederate statues, even like even tearing down a statue of Saddam Hussein. Like, this is your history. If you dislike it, don't you want to learn from it? Don't you want to learn from your mistakes? Don't you?
Okay, so I mean, I don't mean to bring up the common trope, but you think that Germany should have statues of Hitler, like in Berlin and whatnot?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Are
You
there
heard it
not
here first, folks. The Cave of Time
are there not
podcast.
but are
Germany
there
should be
not people
erecting
that
statues of Hitler in the center
well, they
squares
don't
of
hold on,
Berlin, and
hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. They don't tear down the concentration camps. The concentration camps are there still, right?
well, they're actually reproductions of the concentration camps, and they've made them to look more believable than the actual ones ever did.
Okay, but okay, fine. But there must be
No, that's to some degree true, but yeah.
but no,
That's
okay,
to
but there must
some
be
degree true,
there
but
must be original buildings there, right? Like, obviously the buildings have to be maintained and updated, and like, if you don't take care of a building, it falls apart, right? So
yeah,
it's not I'm not making the argument like, okay, well, you have a ship and your ship's 800 years old, but every single piece of wood in the ship is different. Is it the
yeah,
same
yeah,
ship? I'm
yeah.
not I'm not talking about that. I'm saying, like, there are memorials to Nazism in Germany, in Poland, Germany, all over Europe, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, what, like, and people look at those things and they revere them, right? They go there, they visit,
Yeah,
they
I mean it's a little different. It's a little different to have like a slaughterhouse. Like let's say we're in the year 3000, and it's like, oh man, this factory chickening farm where people used to chop off the beaks of live chickens and like pump them full of steroids until they were so big that the bones in their legs broke due to their own weight, not being able to carry their own weight. There's one thing to have that and to tour that. There's another thing to have Schneider.
yes, yeah.
There's nothing to have a
Statue of
statue of
Schneider,
him
yeah.
like in the
Yeah.
city square.
Yeah. And he built the city, and
Yeah.
Schneider fed all the poor people and got that town out of poverty, and like started the industrial Schneider revolution
Yeah,
for
but he also tortured all these animals and blah 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 blah, and we don't want that in our city square anymore. That's the argument against it. I don't agree with that argument. I don't find the topic terribly interesting.
okay,
But that is the
let's move
argument.
on.
No. We don't have like you could deal with that. I don't necessarily want to move on. I'm just saying I don't agree with this argument, but that is the argument that is against you. That is the argument of people
But
who are tearing down these statues.
all of history is filled with villains. All of history, like, we love villains in our history. We love them. Adolf Hitler is probably the most talked about person
You're
in
saying we love
history.
You're saying you love Adolf Hitler?
I'm saying
Did you just say that you love Adolf
did you
Hitler?
just say, hey, listen, I don't appreciate your whiteness right now, okay? I'm not a fan of you telling that to me as a person of color. You know, you need to shut up and listen. You need to shut up and fucking listen. All right? A person of color is talking right now, Jason. You have no place in this conversation unless I give you a fucking place. But yeah, like, you know, we have villains through history. We need, if you're telling history through story, which is the way human beings communicate with each other, through story, through narrative.
Yeah.
You can't have a narrative without a villain. And so if the narrative switches and we say, okay, you know, Thomas Jefferson, he was actually a terrible person. Yes, he founded our country, but our country was founded on terrible beliefs, and that was the dark ages when people used to celebrate his birthday and this and that. You know, we're in the year 3000. Everyone's got their statues of other people up and whatever. But you should still have that statue somewhere in a museum or something, right? It should be in the history books. It shouldn't be burned from the history of the country, right? It happened. It's a thing that happened. If you're a historian, you want to know what happened in history. Yeah. You don't want to say, this is too painful for me, I'm not going to deal with this, let's get rid of it and I'll forget about it and move on. You want to say, look, this is what happened factually in history, this is objectively true, this is a thing that existed.
Yeah, right? I mean, I would probably even argue further on the side of what you're arguing in favor of, so I'm not going to put any substantial counter. I was just trying to give you the arguments that other people would, but to tie it back to what we've been talking about, I just wanted to replace a couple words from a passage that is actually in this book. And I'm not going to tell you what the words are, but we're going to review a passage in this book, and if we were talking about a different group of people other than white people. So, both globally and within particular nation states, Jewish people, Ashkenazi Jews, and their descendants continue to benefit from the racial contract, which creates a world in their cultural image, political states differentially preferring their interests, and economy structured around the racial exploitation of others, and a moral psychology skewed consciously or unconsciously towards privileging them. Taking the status quo of differing racial entitlement is normally legitimate. Taking the status quo of differing racial entitlement is normally legitimate and not to be investigated further. Race scholars use the term Jewish supremacy to describe a socio-political economic system of domination based on racial categories that benefits those defined as perceived as Jewish. This system of structural power privileges, centralizes, and elevated Jewish people as a group. For example, we look at the racial breakdown of who controls our institutions, and we see telling numbers. So then we list the richest people, politicians, people who decide what news is covered, which music is produced, people who direct all the top films. These numbers are not describing minor organizations. These numbers are representing power and control by a racial group that is in the position to disseminate and protect its own self-image, worldview, and interests across the entire society. So that's a passage from the book. And I want you to tell me how that rings. So I had replaced white with Jewish in that passage. I want you to tell me how white is any more true or even equally true as using the term Jewish in that passage, because to me it seems the term Jewish is even more relevant per capita. It's astounding within media, top earners of income. The term Jewish makes much more sense in this packet. Not to say that white doesn't make sense, but if we're going to talk about white supremacy due to these reasons, people occupying positions of power, controlling what is said in the media, if we're going to talk about white supremacy through that lens, certainly Jewish supremacy needs to be talked about, if anything, with a higher tone of voice.
Yeah, so could you do it one more time? Could you read just that passage one more time?
The entire thing?
Just give me 3 sentences from it.
Okay. This system of structural power privileges, centralizes, and elevates Jewish people as a group. For example, we look at the racial breakdown of people who control our institutions, and we see telling numbers.
That's
I'm
fine.
not
That's fine. You can
okay.
stop right there. You can stop right there. So I mean, this is such a word salad, right? This is just such. It's something like it's if you had made that argument, imagine how many people would come out and be like, "What the
Exactly.
fuck are you
That's
talking
why I did
about?
it. That's
Like,
why I did it.
what the
Yeah.
fuck are you talking? Like, this is so racist. This is so anti-Semitic. This is so ridiculous. Like, everyone would say this, and it's when you replace white with Jewish, it doesn't make the statement less true. It just makes it more obvious to how much this is nonsense. Like, this is absolute fucking nonsense. The mainstream line of thought would not support
Well,
this if
no,
it
I
were
mean, so
Jews in America.
you don't think that it's a problem that the like I mean, just granting this is true, and I would say that I would say that it probably actually is true that there is a group of people who dominate the media that do not represent certainly not represent the they do not live the same lifestyle, they do not live in the same culture, they have different interests than the people who are the disseminating and creating the kind of uh, I want to say propaganda, but I don't want to get too risque right now. But
Yeah,
they're feeding they are controlling the media of the populace that they inhabit. So you don't you think that that's a ridiculous thing to consider as a problem?
well, if we are going to group these people together, surely we have to group them by class. Surely class is the best way to group these people together. Like
Why is that?
like because not all of them are Jewish. Not all like right. They're more related to each other by their influence based on who their parents were, what kind of connections they had, how they got these jobs. Um, they're like these people go to all the same charity dinners and they sit with all the politicians and they hang out. They get to have FaceTime with Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Like, you know what I mean? They're related to each other more through their social circle than they are related to each other through their race. No, is that not
Yeah,
true?
I mean, well, I didn't want to go too long on this quote. I cut it there, so I couldn't even go further right now if I wanted to. But she actually goes on to say that well, she's speaking to white people, and she says, well, these people are kind of inhabit the same spaces, and they kind of don't let other people in, and that they pass like positions of power on to their progeny, and they marry people within their circles.
Okay, 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 okay. Just stop. Like, what about like you're Polish, right? You're
Mhm.
Polish. You go from Poland to England. It's the 1970s. It's the 1980s. There's all this like Polish people are flooding into that part of the world. They're taking up all the jobs that are construction, garbage collection, like all the low jobs that people don't want to work. And English people are like, fuck these fucking Polish people. Like, they're taking our jobs. They're a fucking plague on our society.
It's
They're
kind of
white.
like that today, by the way.
Okay, fine, fair enough. It's like that today. But like, they're white. What, like, how could you not think that this is more of an issue between like a group of people who have this benefit of class and a group of people who are trying to come in and trying to climb the social ladder? If this
No,
is your
but they
mind
don't
frame,
like
why do you tie it to
The
race?
English do not think that about the lower English classes.
But okay, they're othered. They're othered based on their nationality. They're not othered based on their race, right?
No, well, I mean, the thing is, you can divide race any different way. Like you could actually say that like Polish is a race and English is a race.
Sure, sure.
That like
Okay,
we
let's go
would
with
have to
that.
get way deeper with genetics on
Amazing,
that. But yeah,
amazing. Let's go with that. Let's say Polish people are one race and English people are another race.
yeah.
This is racism that is experienced between one white race and another white race. That's a problem, right? Uh, let's say we're going in that direction. Robin DiAngelo doesn't want to talk about this shit. She doesn't want to say that there's racism. There's a racial hierarchy between white people. White people
Mm.
in
Yeah,
her
she never
view are a
mentions that. You're right.
monolith.
Yeah.
They're a fucking monolith, right? And so like you could be white and be like Russian or Ukrainian. You could be Polish. You could be South African and be white. And you would, in her mind, you have all of the same advantages when you go to America. Everybody looks like you and they all talk like you. Like, you could literally not speak English and she would be like, oh, you are more like white people than black Americans are like white people. And you don't even understand what the people say in movies and TV on the news. Like, when you go out in your town, you can barely talk to people. Like,
Mm.
how is it possible she thinks that an old white Polish man who lives in New York, who barely speaks English, has an easy time going around, an easier time going around navigating his day-to-day life than a black American whose parents are black and they've lived there their whole lives and they're part of that society, right? And she would say that. She would say they are part of the systemic racism that exists in America. They are white supremacists. They are part of the problem. She would say that, right?
Yeah.
It's absurd on its face. It's so absurd to think that you could tie privilege and power to the color of your skin and not to the group of people that you are in, the society that you are moving into or moving out of or existing in, right?
I don't think it's absurd on its face. No.
What's the problem? What am I getting wrong here?
Um. Well, you're making the positive claim, and I don't think that you have convinced me. So, um, I mean, you can tell the difference between like so the what's talked about in this book is like black and white mostly, right? You can tell
Yep.
the difference between a black person. You can tell the difference between a white person. You can see that. You can experience that, and uh, there are implicit biases that are talked about. There's also the influence of culture. So she talks about how culture influences people to think that white people are superior, black people are inferior.
Yep.
I don't necessarily agree with that, and we could perhaps
Yep.
get into that a bit more later. But like just putting that in front of you, I don't see how you could say that it's absurd on the face of it um, that black people have something in common beyond class, or like a lower class black person or whatever would. Excuse me for trailing off, but do you know what I'm saying?
No, but I disagree because a low, let's say a middle class black person would have more in common with middle class white people in America
But the
than a
claim
new
is that
immigrant Polish person.
the claim is that they would have something in common with a lower class black person and an upper class black person in the same environment that the other white people would not have in common with them.
That's okay. That's a different thing, but that's absurd on its face as well.
Why?
Like if you think that Barack Obama has the same experience
No,
as
it's not.
Trayvon
Yeah,
Martin,
that's a straw
this is
man. It's not the same experience. It is something
okay.
in
Okay,
common.
sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make it a straw man. I'm. This is. Forgive my brown ignorance, Jason. Please.
Yeah.
I'm just. I live in a brown sphere. The brownosphere is very. Sometimes it's hard to see out
You
of my
gotta watch out
racial
for that.
biases.
Brown
Yes.
fragility is even more invisible than
Yeah.
white fragility. But
As a
no, no, no.
brown person.
No. The claim is, and this is not an uncommon claim that like Barack Obama shares something in common with the average black person, like
That,
experientially.
just imagine being like Jay-Z's daughter. She's what, 5 years old right now? 6 years old? I don't know. I'm not into pop culture too much. This girl in 15 years, if she gets into Harvard, is it going to be a surprise to anybody? If she, like this woman is this young girl is going to move in circles that you and me could never dream of, Jason. Never dream of. Like, what does this person have in common with a poor black person in New Orleans?
You're saying like, oh, class has a big influence. Nobody's arguing against that. Like
Yeah. No, I'm not saying
I'm
it's a
just
big
playing devil's advocate right now to a certain extent, but like no, like it's like no, obviously class has an influence, but the argument is that like, oh, you still you dress her in rags, you send her into a gas station in Mississippi,
Okay.
and
Let me try and clean up this line of thinking. So we have decided to divide people by race and say, okay, this circle of people goes through this. This black people go through this, white people go through this. And I'm saying this is an inaccurate way of describing the problem. Like if you change the circle from race to and it doesn't even have to be class. It could just be the social circle that you occupy, your group of friends. There's a number. I can't remember the term for this number off the top of my head. I'm blanking on it. But there's something like you can only hold so many relationships in your mind.
yeah,
at any given time. You can only maintain a certain number of friendships with people, right? And the number's got to be like 150 or something like
Yeah.
that, right? Maybe 300. I can't remember the exact number. I can't remember. I sound like an idiot, but there's a point here, right? So
Yeah, you
if
can't
that
you can't
group,
have an infinite number of friends or maintain an infinite number of friendships. There's a certain number where other people
yes,
start to fade off into the distance and
yes, yes,
disappear
yes,
from
yes,
your
yes.
social
And
circle.
so, like,
Yeah.
if your social circle is, if Hillary Clinton is your social circle, if she's in your social circle, you're gonna have a very different life experience than if Trayvon Martin is in your social circle, right? If someone who's been to jail is in your social circle, if Ted Bundy is in your social circle, like everyone's social circle is going to be different, and it's going to lead them to the kind of lifestyle and privilege that is dictated by uh, what kind of people they can get to know and get in with and use to help each other and move ahead in life. Does that make sense? Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm just saying that it doesn't negate race as being irrelevant.
But it does negate as race being irrelevant, because in 2020 in the United States of America, the people at the top don't care about your race. They don't care what fucking race you are. They
Yeah.
do not care. Like, how
Well,
can you say, hold on, how can you say that we live in a white supremacist society when we have so many people of color who are at the top? What kind of white supremacy is this? Hitler is rolling around in his fucking grave right now, disgusted, vomiting that you've let all these people of color into so many positions of power. Like, this guy is literally disgusted with all the white supremacists of today.
I mean
They
that
are
that
fucking
that that is such an important aspect of this book in my interpretation of it. And like there's so many different ways where it was a fascinating read because her perception of the world around us is totally inverted to mine. So a quote from her is, one of the aspects of institutional power is to disseminate your worldview to everyone. Now,
yes.
every Fortune 5 every Fortune 500 company agrees with her. I
Yep.
can't send a I want to say GIF so bad, but I can't send a GIF on Instagram Messenger without having to sift through 400,000 Black Lives Matter fists in the air in the GIF section. AAA Steam games shut down their servers in remembrance of George Floyd. Apple Music didn't let users play non-black artists for a day in support of the BLM movement. Uber Eats gave free deliveries from black-owned businesses. Google is now demonetizing media organizations that speak out against Black Lives Matter. Amazon pushing this book is the straw that broke the camel's back in us covering this book this episode. Pretty much every politician is talking about this. Walmart, Target, Home Depot, H&M, McDonald's, Wendy's, Coca-Cola. The list does not end. So where is the institutional power opposing this movement? The power. This is, and I mentioned this earlier in the week. This is the empire, and what makes them even more powerful and potent than what you'd see in, like, a Star Wars analogy to the Empire, is that they think that they're the rebels. There's this sense of urgency and this sense of, like, we need to move fast, we need to dominate even more and more and more because we're the underdogs. But how could they be said to be the underdogs given everything I just said?
Yeah, I mean, like, this is the white supremacist society. Who are the white supremacists running the society, and what the fuck is wrong with them? Because they are not doing their jobs, right? Like, they are not doing their jobs to keep the black man down. They just are not. They're fucking sleeping on it. If you are in the KKK right now, or if you're a neo-Nazi, you must be, like, disgusted with what our fucking society looks like. You must be like, what the fuck is with all this television? What the fuck is with all this race mixing?
Oh yeah,
What the
yeah,
fuck?
yeah.
Like, if
I mean, you can't turn on Netflix without, like, the trending section or the recommending to you being like, some documentary about how black people are oppressed or how black people are awesome,
Yeah,
one
so,
or the
like,
other.
who is gonna say with a straight face that we live in the society that white nationalists want to build? Like, how could you say that? How could you think that? Like, how could you understand what a white nationalist is? Have talked to a white nationalist, understand what he or she thinks, understand what his goals are, her goals are, understand what they want to accomplish in the world, and say, yep, we're 100% in line with what they want. we're playing right into their hand. We're basically doing everything for them.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I think it leads back to answer your question. I think it leads back to you look at you like as an intelligent person, like you can say that anecdotes are not how we should sum up how we interact with the world. Like we see a video of a cop. Let's say the cop throws an N word out, and a black guy's running away, and they shoot him in the back. That's terrible.
yeah,
That's terrible. But, we cannot export that to our conception of the world at large as an anecdote. We need to look at stats. And so when we look at stats, we continue to see huge disparities between races. It's undeniable. And
yeah.
if you accept blank slate theory and you don't dare to tread on taboo grounds, I think it naturally follows that, yeah, we must still live. I mean, at the very least, at the absolute very least, and I think it's actually, thin. It's not that strong an argument, but if you accept it's all blank slate, at the very least, it's like the legacy of slavery that we got to get over. It's the legacy of Jim Crow that like we got to rectify, and we got to make this right.
But what would have to happen for these? This is like a problem with religion, right? So you say to somebody who is religious, like, what evidence would I give to you to show you there is no God?
Yeah.
And they say things like, you can't. There's no evidence you could show me. And it's the same thing. So it's like, what would have to happen
Yeah.
to the people that think that we live in a white
Yeah.
supremacist society? What would have to happen for you to believe that we don't live in a white supremacist society?
Equanimity.
So they would want complete, perfect, like, the races line up with success, they line up with
Yeah.
education, they line up with,
Yeah, I think so.
and
Yeah.
and like, how could that possibly ever happen? How
Well,
is
it
that
would
ever?
it would naturally happen. It would happen
How could that happen?
if all opportunities were made to be equal.
But if you
Then all
no,
outcomes
hold
would
on,
be.
hold on. If you think that all races are equal and
Yeah.
black people have the same inclinations and the same
Everything's
potential
the
and the
exact
same
same. Yeah.
all black people, white people, like, you just take a white brain and throw it in a black body, it's the same. Like, they have all the same potential as white people. They have all the same. If they just had the opportunities, if we just went in this racist society, wouldn't you also think, like, okay, but they have the freedom to do whatever they want, and they could choose to do the things that they want, and then, like, you wouldn't see, why would you think that they would all want to do the same things and
No, it's
want
not.
to
It's
achieve
not
the same
all
thing?
about wanting the same thing. It's that on average, you would see the same outcomes. If all opportunities were equal and all
But you
starting
don't.
positions were equal, yeah, some people might decide to run slower, some people might decide to get a drink at the gas station,
But
but
you don't.
everybody's
You
like on
don't.
average going to finish at the same time at the finish line.
But you don't see this in white society among people. Like, let's just look at white people, right? Like, beautiful people do better than ugly people.
Yeah.
Like, smart people do better than stupid people. Tall people do better than short people, right? There's tons of things that dictate what kind of success you're going to have in the world. There's so many different things that dictate it. And it's like, okay, like, are we focusing on people as individuals, or are we focusing them on as groups?
No, we're
And if we're
focusing
going
them
to
on groups. We're explicitly focusing them on groups,
yeah, so
especially
then
within the context of this book.
why are we choosing to put the groups on race? Why aren't we focusing on all the good-looking people and all the ugly people? Why not? It's arguably way more tied to success how good-looking you are than how what your race is. It's
I mean,
arguably
it might just be arbitrary, but yeah, it might just be arbitrary.
how tall you are, how confident you are, your IQ. Your IQ would probably be the easiest one to look at, right? But, like, you could choose to divide. You could look at where people fall, how good they're doing, how bad they're doing, and then you could look at all the metrics of how these people relate to each other, and you could pick out the metric that they all have in common the most, and say, okay, this is the common metric. This is why they're successful. And it wouldn't be race. It would be some other metric, right? And then, like, to blame that metric would seem silly. It would seem like okay, you're putting the cart before the horse. You are putting the causality in with the frequency of this happening. This is not how you do statistics. You're supposed to do. It's just not the way scientists look at the world, and this is how we're looking at the world. Am I not filling this out right? Am I not making sense?
No, I mean, first of all, I think a lot of scientists do look at the world this way. But second of all, like you just picked out one of the things you picked out was height. Yeah, I do think there are important like sociological reasons why taller people have more success than shorter people, and I don't necessarily think it's fair. And you could say that we should try to rectify that.
If we chose height, and that was the thing we chose to focus on, it would seem more unifying than race. There's more people that have height disparity than have race disparity.
What do you mean there's more people that have height disparity? I don't know what you mean by that.
There's less of an inclination. Like you can't say, oh well, all the CEOs are tall and all. It's like it's a bad example. I'll just disband this. Like I can't put it into my head to explain it in a good way. So I'm just gonna. You can have the point. You win this argument. I'm gonna have to come back to this and really think about this.
The white man wins again.
What? If you just shut up and listen to me, maybe you'd learn something. But now I'm just so exhausted.
This was a time for white. Yeah. This was a time for white silence for sure.
Yeah, I'm just exhausted, Jason. I'm just so exhausted of trying to explain it to you, and I just can't. I just can't anymore. So I just want to thank you for your contribution, and I recognize how important your contribution is, and I just want to say that your feelings are very valid, and I will go and think on my brownness.
Oh damn! You respond. Oh, fuck. Yeah, that was deep. That was deep.
All right. I wanted to talk about the people who are putting together the talks for Robin DiAngelo and the YouTube videos a bit. Okay. So if you go look at her on YouTube, you see a lot of white people who get on stage. Not white, black people too. They're normally her talks are at like universities or something, and she'll be in like a public space or university, a library. Libraries are pretty big for her, and you see these people go up and they say things like, "Hey, before we get started, I just want to say that I recognize we're on native land."
Yes, right yes, now. I was going to say that. Yes, yeah. And that's very common, man.
I just want to. Everyone to take a moment and celebrate the fact that this is actually native land, and we should be respectful of them, and just try and notice how important they are to our lives. And we're very glad that they lent us this land and we can use it.
And then in the answer, and it'll be like, "Thank you so much for your question, and I also want to acknowledge the fact that they're on Duwamish land, and the Duwamish people speak Duwamese, and yes. I just wanted to say like, Huga Luga, Dishtal."
So I wrote this in my notes. I wrote just imagine like you and me go to our friend's house, our friend Brett, right? We haven't seen him in a while. We're gonna go visit him. He's like, "Hey man, just bought a house. Like this is amazing. Like I'm doing really well. Come for a visit." We're like, "Oh my god, this is amazing, Brett. I haven't seen you in like 10 years. Like this is gonna be fantastic." So you and me get together, we drive down to Brett's house, and as we're pulling up, like it's a mansion, like it's fucking amazing. He's got a hedge maze, he's got laser tag, he's got paintball, water slides, like the whole deal. We're like, whoa, fucking Brett's doing amazing. Like this is fantastic. Can't wait to hang out with Brett. We're gonna drink, we're gonna have some fun. It's gonna be a great night. Can't wait to catch up. Awesome, right? And then as soon as we get there, we're like, ding dong, and he opens the door, and we're like, Brett, oh, so good to see you, brother. So amazing to see you. And he's like, guys. I can't wait to hang out with you. But just before we get into this, I just want to give credence to the original owner of this house. And we're like, oh, yeah. Let's get this.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. We're clapping. We're like, yeah. And then we're like, Brett, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, like the guy who used to own this house. We're like, oh, the guy you bought for the house from? And he's like, well, no, the owner of this house, I actually have him like tied up in the basement, and he's there with his family. And I'm just like, I give him food every once in a while and stuff. But, like I stole this house from him. We're about to go have a great time together. And I just thought like it's appropriate for us to, pay homage to him and his family. They're in the basement right now. They don't get that much food. Like, I don't really give them that much, so they have a hard time. But if we pay homage to him, then we'll be able to move on with our night and enjoy it. And like we have to. We
That's
would be
pretty
so
funny, yeah.
selfish to not pay homage to that family tied up in the basement right now. And you and me immediately would look at him and be like, yeah, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm calling the police. Like, you're a fucking maniac. Like, what have you done? How have you done this? And these people who do these speeches are like, yes, we are on stolen land. It doesn't belong to us. But let's just move on. It's not a big deal. We can still sit. Like, these people do not believe what they're saying. They do not believe what they're saying. They don't. There's no way. If you legitimately felt that Native people owned the land that you were on giving your speech, you wouldn't give the speech. You would leave. You would be outside in protest. You would be like, yo, fuck this. Well, I am not giving the speech here.
To change your analogy to think something I think would be more appropriate, and I don't want to be too tedious about this, but it's more like Brett comes out and he says, like, listen, man, my dad owns this house and he stole it from some people. And I'm living here now. Like, I can't move out. I don't have the means to move out right now. But like, yeah, we're gonna go have a good night. But I just want to let you guys know that, like, yeah, my dad stole this from some people, and like, let's just like appreciate like everything that they like.
Well,
did for us here.
It would be like that, but he'd also have to be like, yeah, and also they're like right over there on the other side of the wall, and I have like armed security keeping them out of here, and like,
yeah, it's more like that.
If they try to come in, we'll shoot them in the fucking face, but don't worry about it too much. But like we should be respectful, right? Like we should give them their dues.
Yeah.
These people are ridiculous. Like, there's no way. They don't care about this fucking shit they say. They just say it so that they can get that fucking sweet social clout.
They're definitely getting dopamine from it, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that they don't care.
How could you care? How could you care about these issues and not immediately want to be like, here's your land back?
That's the thing, is that like I from my perspective, this type of thinking is very cult-like, and it creates its own self-sustaining like neural network, basically, of where you can get dopamine rewards and where you can feel communion with other people, and I mean, we could even go into like the white woman tears stuff. Like that was one that really set me off.
Please, let's go into that. Before we go into that, just imagine being Robin DiAngelo and not giving all your money to black people. Like, how could you not? How could she not give this is a rich white woman who thinks she is a white supremacist and trying to do everything she can to make herself as little as she's trying to make herself less racist as much as possible over her lifetime.
Yeah.
Why is she not living on the streets? Why is she not homeless right now? Why is she not giving her home to a black body? Why is she not instead of sending her children to university, sending black children to university? What is wrong with this woman? How could you think these things and then not feel so fucking bad?
I would think that she's probably thinks that she's doing more good with more money, right? Like she's like, she's getting more money, but that allows her to spread the message further.
Okay, but she lives in California. Why couldn't she just move to Mississippi and live in a house that's worth 10 times less and give all that money to Black Lives Matter? Why does she have to send her kids to a school in a good neighborhood?
You could kind of say that to anybody who cares about anything. It's like, why didn't you sacrifice your entire life for this?
True.
And like,
that's true. That's very true. Yes, yeah, that is the better criticism right there. Yeah. Go ahead. Go talk about
our show links are kind of messy right now, but I think it's the second one. There's only two there, so I'm hoping it's the second one and I didn't fuck it up. But we're gonna play the second link there from 1836. I'm gonna pull it up now.
Just give me a sec. Second link.
Yeah, no worries.
Got it open. 1836.
Yeah, and I'm hoping this is it. I apologize to the audience if it's not, but 1836. Here we go.
We see it in the outrage of the crowd of white progressives who showed up to hear Bernie Sanders speak in Seattle. and were asked by black
This is actually
activists
different,
to
but-
grant 4.5 minutes of silence
Did you
to
want
honor
play something
Michael
else then?
Brown,
No, this is good.
an unarmed black man shot by police in Ferguson, Missouri. "How dare you?" the crowd cried.
So this girl, so that, like, I'm pausing it right now. So she's actually talking. This is actually a different thing that I want to bring it up, but it's actually also somewhat relevant. She's actually talking about an experience that Bernie Sanders had in I believe it was Seattle. And what she was defending, I'm going to pull that up on screen right now for the audience. This is Black Lives Matter approaching Bernie Sanders at a rally. And to me, this kind of totally ended my respect for Bernie Sanders.
It ended his career. Bernie Sanders' career ended after this happened.
I mean, you just heard from her. Anyway, I'm sending you the link on Telegram, but you just heard from her that she thinks that he should have handled this differently, and I think a lot of people agree with that. So
I didn't get through the whole clip. Could you summarize it, please?
Yeah. Oh no. It was actually a very short clip. She was just saying that white fragility can be seen in the way that white people handled their response to the Black Lives Matter protests at the Bernie Sanders rally. I just sent you the link right now. And I'm gonna. Do you have that?
Yep.
I'm gonna start playing right now. It might be a little quiet, but right now.
Yep.
Thank you, Seattle, for being one of the most progressive cities in the United States of America.
Fuck, I wish I could turn this up. So there's some people approaching him, and they ran up on stage, and he's just being very submissive. So he's saying, okay. Oh no, just let me talk. No. And they're just getting up in his face, wagging their fingers. And then this song was actually cut into the event's feed, so nobody can even talk on the mic right now. There's people currently yelling at the campaign staff on stage, and they're totally shutting things down. Bernie's sitting in back. He's trying to keep a cheery appeal.
Do not silence her. Do not silence her.
Black power fists in the sky.
We're trying to read.
Like, if you could see this video, podcast audience, right now, they're like, we are reasonable, and they're being totally unreasonable. So they're like the campaign staff. The campaign staff is like, we'll let you guys speak. We will. We appreciate your perspective. Like, we'll let you speak after the conference. They're like, no, now.
Do not tell me what to do.
After Senator Sanders. Okay. All right.
Sit down. Let her speak.
We're shutting it down.
Yeah, and then the campaign staff eventually concedes. There's police all over. They very well. This is their event. They booked it. They've got permits. They very well could have turned these guys away, gotten the cops to take them off stage, but they didn't do that.
You are shutting it down.
We are shutting it down.
Yeah. Then they cut this John Legend song back into the feed.
It's John Legend.
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm very happy.
Yeah, he's like, hold it, and they're not being responsive, and he says, if that's your attitude, I have nothing to say. And then essentially they just start walking off stage at this point and let these Black Lives Matter protesters take over the stage.
Yeah, and then they take it over for 8 minutes, 10 minutes?
Funny enough, you mentioned that, like, Duwamish land. I think she actually says we're on occupied Duwamish land coming up. And I apologize for the podcast audience or the listeners in general. The volumes are all over the place on this clip. I think it might get loud in a second here when they take over the mic.
Sanders.
Yeah, there we go. I'll turn it down a bit.
I would like to welcome you to this place called Seattle. Which is
What's your timestamp there?
Occupied Duwamish land.
Occupied Duwamish land. We're at 2:55.
Yeah.
And hypocritically named after Chief Sealth. We are located in King County, where the silhouette of Martin Luther King reigns high, while we spend
Black Power fists.
$200 building a new jail to imprison black children.
There's just some sweet earrings.
Actually, they are sweet earrings, yeah.
Yeah.
She's got big crosses. We're talking
I actually
like
like
6.5
I
inches.
really like their style.
Racial
I hate their attitudes. Like I like even if they were saying something I agreed with, like just looking at their postures,
I don't know,
their
man.
tone
That
of
girl on
voice.
the right's kind of hot, man. I kind of like it.
Black Power fist again.
She can get it.
I mean, like I recognize that she has aesthetic appeal, but I wouldn't go any further. I wouldn't go any further than that.
It's because you're a white supremacist. You can't see
true,
black
it's true.
beauty. You can't see black beauty.
Got a white supremacist penis. So the audience is booing her. Like there's people in the audience right now.
Welcome to Seattle. Where we have undergone
Welcome to Seattle, Bernie.
intense gentrification in the Central District, where used to be the only place
Yeah.
black people could live legally in Seattle. Welcome.
Wait, what? Whoa. Can you pause there?
This is
Yep.
what-
Did you make it to the... This is
We're,
the
we're
only
at
place
we're
where
at
we can
424.
live. Yeah. So she said, like, this is the only place where we can live legally. Black people can only live legally here right now. Can you imagine Seattle having a policy not letting black people live in a certain neighborhood?
Oh yeah, and that's what's so crazy about some of the talk in this book too is that, like, you know, I don't think they say explicitly black people don't have equal rights, but they say things to that effect many times, like black people are not equal citizens and whatnot.
They do this thing in this book where they say, like, so their premise is like, or her mindset is like, you don't have to agree with this, but it's true whether or not you agree with it. And then she'll say like XYZ, and all that is taken as read, like it's all taken as true, and you're like, whoa, what the fuck are you saying, man? Like, she leaves no room to argue against her premises.
Yeah.
She builds her whole argument on these premises, and then she circles back and she makes a great fucking metaphor where she's like, imagine it like a dock, and below the water there are the pillars that hold up the dock, but they are rotten on the bottom. And we need to go and look at the pillars and see what's wrong with there under the pillars. And it's like, your whole argument is built on rotten pillars. Like you just
Yeah,
completely fucked
that was
everything
my
up.
point. Is it's a totally shaky foundation.
Yeah,
We
so
can
go ahead.
we can cut that clip now. Basically, like, they call the entire audience racist, which, you know, Robin DiAngelo would agree with. And
Yeah, I
the
mean, if
audience
you're in
gets
Seattle-
very offended by that, and they say, "How dare you? How dare you?" But that event got shut down.
We're talking about Bernie Sanders. We're talking about the Young Turks' biggest, baddest friend, best friend in the whole world. Who is a more progressive candidate for black people? Like, who would they prefer out of the eligible candidates for black people?
Well, I
guess
mean,
anyone is-
the Young Turks
anyone is black.
was very much behind Bernie Sanders. So
No, I'm saying like Robin DiAngelo. Like, who out of the possible candidates for president of the United States of America, who would like? There's no way this woman does not support Bernie Sanders. She obviously supports Bernie
Yeah,
Sanders.
well, I mean, she was more decrying the audience for getting offended about being called racist.
Fair enough. All right.
Yeah. So, like, I was just bringing up that, like, I mean, to me, it's just blatantly obvious that these people did not belong on stage. It's like, yeah, he could be gracious, and he could even think that their message was great, and let them on stage after, or even give them a spot at some other event. But this was they literally hijacked the sound system, plugged in their own devices. They hopped on stage unwelcome. They stole the mic, and they kicked Bernie Sanders off stage. And these actions are defended by someone like Robin DiAngelo, and not only defended by Robin DiAngelo, but to your point that, like, who else would they want other than Bernie Sanders? The Bernie Sanders campaign, I looked into this after this event happened. They did not decry the protesters in this. What they actually did was revamp their campaign platform and said that they were inspired by this event, and they changed their campaign platform based on these protests.
That's the Robin DiAngelo way, right? Like,
Yeah.
they listened to a black person of color
Yeah.
criticizing them, and they heard the words and
Exactly.
thought about it.
Exactly.
And they thought about what they should change to be less racist.
And they did. I mean, I was
Yeah.
shocked, but that's actually what transpired in the aftermath.
Yeah, so
of
I
this.
mean, I guess it's kind of like in the wild, you are seeing what happens when people subscribe to this kind of thinking, right? You're seeing, yeah, and it's just, how is this helpful for Black people? This completely destroyed Bernie Sanders' chance to be the president of the United States of America ever in his whole life.
Well, it divided people. So someone like me, I like after that, like I could no longer possibly see Bernie Sanders as a leader. He's obviously a pushover. He's obviously, I mean, to use a insulting, perhaps juvenile term, he's a pussy.
He's a cuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay, but even if you're not in that realm, like if
no,
you're
because
Bosch,
there's people on the other side, like Robin DiAngelo, that were like, "Yo, you should have just walked off stage to begin with. Like, you should have accepted these people. You should have told the audience to stop doing."
Exactly.
Like, so it totally created a rift.
Well, he made nobody happy, right? Like, he should have either immediately let them speak and be like, "Yes, we have a Black voice right now. Where I'm going to give up the stage to hear a Black voice first. You let me know when you're done, and then I will start my thing." Or his thing should have been like, "Yo, get the fuck out of here. Like, security, get the fuck out of here."
Yeah.
But he was in the middle. He was wavering, right? And he didn't make a choice at the right time. If he had made either choice, it would have been much better for his political campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's an interesting case. I mean, he's an old white man, and he is socialized into racism, right? So how could you expect him to come to the understanding and come?
Well, he reacted immediately with white fragility, but he reflected and then corrected his immediate negation of Black and brown bodies. Experiences.
Yeah, but that's not good enough. That's not what we want from our politicians. Our politicians need to instinctively know when it is time for Black voices and when it is time. If someone who is Black comes onto the stage, it doesn't matter what their credentials are. It doesn't matter what their subject matter is. It doesn't matter what they want to talk about. You are a white person trying to negate a Black body, and you are throwing onto them all of the things that they are insecure about and all of the things that they have to put up every day with every single day.
That's the thing on the white tears thing. So I mean, I'm not sure if I can pull up. I don't even need to pull up the clip. Then that's what they talk about, is that like sometimes white women will cry in the conferences that Robin DiAngelo holds, and that's not okay. Like, white women tears are not okay. And like, so a white woman speaking over me, that's one thing. They might have something to say. They might want to just, just before you finish that, just let me get in this point. That's okay. But it's actually totally different if a white woman speaks over a Black person, and there's entire, hundreds of years of history of historical grievances that she's embodying when she does that, and that, even a quote, Robin DiAngelo is like, "If I ever cry, I make sure it's quiet and to keep it to myself." And that inspired to me some serious simping for white women. I became so this was perhaps the time that I had what this is chapter 11. I feel like I coasted for a while without any white fragility, but when I got to chapter 11, I started really simping for the white woman. I was almost like a Black Hebrew Israelite for the white race, and I was like, "White is wonderful, baby. Don't try to let them make you feel ashamed." But they're literally, and that's why it's so cult-like, right? It's using the maternal instincts. It's using what could be argued like the better nature of white women and against them. And the emotions. Yes. It's exactly like the argument I made against the joke argument I made against Robin DiAngelo, where it was like, "Hey, you need to shut up. As a white woman, like, your opinion doesn't matter." And how absurd is that? Like, how it's a fault in her thinking, right? Like, she thinks that people have value based on their skin color, and therefore their opinion should be valued based on what color their skin is. Yeah.
Right? And that, like, it's literally the exact opposite of Martin Luther King's speech. It's literally the exact, like, she's like, "I don't want to judge people based on the content of their character. I want to judge them based on the color of their skin. And if they have white skin, they are less valuable. And if they have black skin, they're more valuable, and if they have brown skin, it's somewhere in the middle, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
That's why I was so fascinated to see the trending hashtag in Toronto, hashtag brown fragility. This actually happened last night, and it was pretty. I was pretty happy to see it. I mean, I'm gonna try to pull it up on screen for the viewers right now and read a couple out to you.
Could you give me some context as to why this trended? Because I'm not in Toronto and I don't understand what's going on in Toronto.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll actually just read a bunch of them. Sorry, my screen is bouncing all over the place, but let me just get it up on screen for the viewers here. Boom. Yeah, so we've got Dear Brown People. So this is actually just talking about a video of a brown guy, which I guess I won't play right now.
Sorry, who's writing this? Is it the black person writing this?
There's all types of people. There's black people, brown people, white people.
Okay.
Actually, I kind of want to play. I'm gonna play this video for the audience. I'll link it to you right now. I hate it when we have downtime like this, but
it's okay. It's fine.
Yeah. So I'm sending this to you right now on Telegram.
Nobody watches this show anyways, Jason. Who gives a fuck?
You got to stop doing that because people actually do watch it. We like even on our 2 bombing episodes, we got like over 70 views cross-platform apiece.
All right.
So I'm just playing that one I sent you right now. This is actually the first one I had seen, and this is just a brown guy talking about brown privilege and how it needs to be addressed. You ready?
Dear brown conservatives.
Yep, we're going to start playing right now.
If you're Desi and you have conservative beliefs when it comes to racial issues, you have been fooled by the model minority myth. Let me break that down for you. In 1965, the United States government put into place a new immigration act that only allowed Asian immigrants in that had very high education levels or special skills. And because of this, we were predetermined to be successful. And when we were, the media painted us as model minorities, as good, law-abiding citizens that were the opposite of black people. But remember, black Americans were not introduced to the society on the basis of education. They were brought in as slaves, as property. And then they were lynched, and then they were segregated against and forced into ghettos and not given jobs, and they were mass incarcerated against, and then they were criminalized for petty drug crimes, and so much more. And these issues generationally affect their communities because it's part of the system. So yes, South Asians face ignorance, casual racism, hate crimes, but we have never in American history been systematically dehumanized and oppressed in the way that black people have.
Okay, so stopping that right now. I'll get into
a
couple
my
more.
Goodness, this guy is so
tweets.
brown. This
no, here's some tweets. Like South Asian and Middle Eastern communities need to look inward. We perpetuate. This is speaking as a brown person. We perpetuate the racial hierarchy in the West. Enough with being the good little Asian people who still get blamed for 9/11 and pandemics, etc. Then turn around and ignore black and indigenous suffering. Hashtag enough. Happy to see brown fragility trending. As a settler South Asian woman, I was able to easily code switch. Many of the brown stereotypes were in my favor. I am the token POC because of my invisible whiteness.
Amazing. These are my people. My people.
Yeah. How can we go towards black culture when we want credit for being cool, but quickly shift to white culture when we want to be proper and professional? How can the black community trust us when we are playing both sides? Hashtag brown complicity, hashtag brown fragility. And there's a whole bunch of tweets about that that trended last night.
Fuck.
I love it though.
I mean, trying to turn all the brown people against all the white people. Eh?
Well, what was so fascinating about that is like there's this kind of a religious aspect to it. This kind of self-flagellation. Yeah, exactly. And it's nice to see that expand outwardly and not just be white people who are like, oh, we're terrible, we need to, you know.
It's nice to see brown people get involved in the self-flagellation. Indian people, but like I'm talking like such an Indian right now I'm such an Indian stereotype moving my hands around right now. But like Indian people, you live like you are from the poorest fucking country in the world, where people are shitting in the streets, where people don't have food, where people don't have vaccines, where people are as poor can be. And you're like, look at all the advantages we have from being Indian. Isn't it amazing? Like India is arguably worse. Parts of India are arguably worse than parts of Africa right now. And obviously, like who is going to say a black person living in America is worse off than a poor Indian in India? This is insanity. These people are insane. These people are rich Indians. There's no way a poor person in India would give a fuck about any of these things.
I think they have just as much a good reason as white people in Western countries to feel guilty about these things.
Indians. Yeah. Indians. Go on. Can you expand on that, please?
Oh well, I mean, they're rich. They're benefiting from the system. Like literally every single metric that you could use to justify the other side of things applies to them as well.
Indians.
Does it not? Yeah. Does it not? Does it not?
On a world scale.
No. Like within North America.
Yeah, within North America, all the Indians are doing great. Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, you say that like it's joking, but it's actually on average they're doing even better.
Why is that, Jason?
They're way above average.
Why are the Indians doing better?
They're way above average.
Why are they doing better? Is it because white people love them so much?
Because
white people can get.
No, it's
confused?
because it's because of their complicity in the white hierarchical system.
Yeah, exactly. So like Indian people they look at black people and they're like, haha, we can exploit them, and the white people will love us for it, and they will move us up their social ranks because they love Indians so much.
No, because they're exploited as model minorities, as explained by that one top tweet there.
Are you out of your fucking mind? Like how could you understand the Indian experience, Jason? How could you ever understand the Indian experience? Like every single fucking gripe that black people have with white people, Indian people have the same gripes. Oh, I've been called a fucking Paki. Do you know what it feels like to be called a Paki? Someone I've been in a bar fight where somebody literally spat in my face and called me a fucking Paki.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yes. Like, did I think? I was like, oh, he did this because he is a white nationalist, and he looks at me like I am dirty and disgusting, and I could never be the same as him. Or did I think it because we were in a fucking bar fight? Like, give me a fucking break. This is ridiculous. Indian people have the same opportunities as black people in Canada. They have the same opportunities as white people in Canada. Indian people do well in Canada because Indian people have a culture of working hard, sending their kids to school, not giving a fuck what anybody else says. They're like, no, my son will be a doctor. My son will be a lawyer. My son will be an engineer.
Well, how do you think that the cultural argument is fair with something like Indians and something like Jews, but it's not fair with something like whites?
With blacks or whites?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, whites are not a culture. Like, it's not like if you're Polish, that's different than being British. That's different than being Serbian.
I mean, within the continental North America, it's not too different.
Well, it's not. It's why you see disparity between different white people from different parts of the world, right? There are poor white people. Like Americans, I wouldn't say white Americans have a great work ethic.
I just take issue with saying that the average Polish person has a substantially different experience than the average British person in North America.
Let's say, sorry, could you say that again?
I just take issue with the suggestion that the average Polish person has a substantially different experience in this conversation than the average British person in North America.
Well, of course they have a different experience. Are you out of your fucking mind?
I mean, as long as they speak the language, literally,
as long as they speak the language.
Yeah.
Do you not know Polish people who their first language is Polish?
Sure, and that's why I said the average Polish person in North America and the average British person in North America.
The average Polish person, their first language is Polish. Their first language is not English. The average Polish person's first language is Polish. So the average Polish person that goes to America speaks Polish first, not English first. They are like Indian people who go to America, go to Canada.
But what we talk about with Indian and black extends intergenerationally. So when we talk about a second generation Polish person or a second generation Indian person, a second generation Polish person is going to be.
Are you out of your fucking mind?
How?
Are you out of your mind?
How?
My family was deported from Africa. They're Indian people deported from Africa. There are tons of Ismaili Indians in Toronto right now whose parents had all of their wealth stripped from them. They went to Canada, they went to England, they went to all these countries, United States of America, as refugees, and they were the poorest people in the
What's your
fucking
point?
world. And now they're doing well because their family structure and their culture is on points. They took their kids there and they were like, get educated now. All you need to do is
I
get
guess
to
to
school.
distill my point is that as soon as a Polish person, let's say second generation, has the standard cultural references and speaks the same way as everybody else in the country, they will be almost they will be indistinguishable to the average North American populace from the average British person of descent, second generation. Whereas
Absolutely
you cannot
not.
say
Absolutely not.
yes, for sure.
Absolutely not.
For
Absolutely
sure,
not.
100%.
How
How can you
no,
disagree with
absolutely
that?
not. Do you not spend time with Polish people? Do you not have many Polish friends?
Yes, I've had plenty. I've dated a Polish girl.
Yeah. So Polish people have their own culture. Like you go to Polish people and they have their own sets. They don't.
Yeah,
like,
but when they step outside, when
Did
they
you
go to a
not- okay,
convenience
when you-
store,
when you
like
dated-
nobody's
when
like,
you-
oh, that's a Polish girl.
when you dated, what do you mean nobody's like that's a Polish girl?
Nobody's
you
like
can't tell
that.
the difference
Nobody's
between
like that.
Slavics and Brits. You
No,
can't tell
no,
the
no,
difference
no,
when you look at them.
No, I can now that I've become attuned and aware to this. But you asked me 10 years ago, no, I couldn't.
Dude, you need to check your privilege. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I think that's not true. I think that's you must have a lack
You're
of experience.
telling me I walk down the street, I talk to the average white person, and I say, hey, let's go to this pub, and you tell me who's Polish, who's Czech, who's
Yes,
British, who's...
absolutely.
No way.
Maybe
no
not.
way.
Hold on.
Absolutely not.
Hold on. Maybe not. I sound like Nuka Zeus right now. I'm sorry. I apologize. But maybe I can't say who's Czech, who's Polish, who's Russian. But I can tell you if someone's Slavic or British or Irish.
No, well, I mean, if they've got like red hair, they're probably Scottish or Irish or something. But like other than that,
well, it's not even like okay, like we're seeing. Let's do this in the real world. We're not like being thrown random people, and it's like, is that one this? Is that one this? We're in a bar. It's an Irish pub, and there's a bunch of Irish people. Like you can tell, some of them are Irish, some of them have red hair.
this
some
is
of them
absurd.
Don't. Like,
this is absurd. Like if you're trying to
This is
tell me, if
absurd.
you're no, let's like just put it down to brass tacks. If you're trying to tell me that someone who is genetically of Indian heritage, 100% Indian heritage, is more easy to pinpoint as different than white, or rather more easy to pinpoint as a distinguishable group than someone who is of Italian heritage in that same pub, distinguishable from white people, or distinguishable in any sense, that's ridiculous.
you can't tell the difference between Indians and Italian people in a bar.
No,
Are you out of
that's
your
what I'm saying. Is like you like it. The average person will not be able to tell readily the difference exactly between an Italian person and any other white person as they would be from an Indian person.
I completely disagree. I completely disagree. No, what do you mean what? What do you mean what? You can't tell
people
the
tell me
difference?
they think I'm Italian.
Oh my god. Oh my goodness.
No one has ever told me they think I'm Indian. I've never been mistaken for
Exactly.
Indian.
Wait, I must be not understanding this then. So we are saying that it's easy to tell the difference between Indians and Italians.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I for some reason I got my wires crossed there. I thought you were saying that it was impossible to tell. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. That's on me.
What I'm saying is that all these different groups like of white people can kind of blend together, whereas an Indian cannot blend into that.
No. You can't tell the difference between Italian people and Irish people?
No, there's a lot of Italian people that you do not know are Italian by looking at them, and most people do not.
In general,
most people
okay,
do
like
not.
yes, there's a lot of Italian. Oh, but I know an Italian guy who's dark skinned. I know an Italian guy with blonde hair.
And then there's
Yes.
one guy who looks Italian and he's not Italian.
Give me a fucking break, man. You can't tell the difference between like, can you not tell the difference between Sean King and a black person?
Ha 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 ha.
Can you tell the difference between Indian people and black people? Is there a blurred line there for you that's difficult?
No. That's the whole brown fragility point too.
Okay, so maybe you win on that because I thought you were gonna say, yes, I can tell the difference between black people and Indian people. So it just seems
No,
weird
sorry,
for me.
no. Sorry. There is a difference, and that's the whole point. I feel like we're lost in the weeds. I want to delete this part from the podcast.
Lost. No, I don't think so. I think this is good content. I think it's good.
I don't know. I feel like I might have misunderstood. I might have misunderstood what. Yeah, I'm kind of lost in the weeds right now. But I might have misunderstood what you're saying.
What are we talking about? What's the point? What is the point?
Well, we had brought up this brown fragility thing. You said it was ridiculous. I said it was not. It was no more ridiculous than there to be this white fragility concept. And then I was mentioning the point that. Various different groups of white people can blend together as one giant group of white people, whereas Indian, Pakistani groups like that cannot fit into that zone.
Say it one more time. I'm sorry. Say it one more time.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to understand the point. I'm sorry. Just one more time.
We brought up this trending hashtag, brown fragility, right?
Yes.
You said it was ridiculous. And I said, okay, maybe it is ridiculous, but it's not.
Yes.
It's not any more ridiculous than the white fragility concept.
Well, they're both ridiculous. They're both insane.
Sure.
Yeah, that's okay. So there's the disconnect. There's the disconnect. Oh, the only pop culture reference I have to put in is that chick from The Office, the brown chick. Her brother applied to Harvard as a black person and got. He couldn't get into university as a brown person, and he got in as a black person into Harvard. And I will say this. So this is a secret that I'm not supposed to tell, but Chinese people and brown people do this thing where if you take the SATs and you're in high school in Canada, we actually send other people to take our SAT scores. So like if you're rich, and you go to a rich, affluent school in Canada, let's say you're Chinese, right? You don't have the grades. You can't, you're not going to get in. Like what you do is you pay another Chinese guy to go and take your SATs for you.
I've heard of that,
and then you get into school. And brown people do the same thing. And I'm betraying my fucking race right now because they don't want me to tell that they do this, but they do this all the fucking time. All the time.
Mm.
So anyways, that's a side note. But that's your fault because you're white and you don't notice we all look different.
Yeah, I feel like we got that was the opposite of my point, but I feel like we got sidetracked a lot. Could we? So like I brought that up. I mean, I feel like. Do you have anything more to say about the book?
Yeah, I do actually. So we can actually probably tie this in a nice bow, as we like to.
Ribbon.
A nice ribbon. Yeah, so if you look at the reviews of the book online, they're very different from the. Sorry, one second. I just gotta open the door for my doggy.
Yeah, so I know Washington Post gave it I actually had expected Washington Post to give it a strong review, but it was lukewarm at best.
Yeah, okay, so, sorry, I just need to open the door for my dog. You want to go out to pee, but now he just wants to hang out with me. You okay, bud?
All right. Yeah, Washington Post was basically just saying that, I mean, it's a decent book, but it's a little oversimplistic, and that there's other books on the same topic that are perhaps more comprehensive and relevant.
Yeah, so if you, oh my God, can you give me 1 second?
Stop talking about
Bobby, sorry, sorry. So if you go to the reviews on Amazon and if you go to the reviews on Goodreads, they're all, 4.5 stars. That's amazing reviews. But if you actually start reading the reviews, there's tons and tons and tons of bad criticisms or criticisms, I should say, of the book. And these people give 4.5, 5-star reviews for books they don't like. So like, here's a 4.5-star review. This book is written by a white person for other whites. Most of what she writes is common sense, but no doubt useful for white folk struggling to not feel attacked when racism is discussed. I was annoyed by the remark at about 25%, where the author points out that she isn't a fan. She isn't a fan of Black History Month or Black First. Sigh, sigh, sigh. Her opinion on what Black folks create for themselves is irrelevant, racially insensitive, and out of pocket. I agree that her I agree with her that the Black First should be presented as finally white people stop being so racist and oh my goodness, and let this Black person participate. I'd argue with her that what Black folk already understand to be the context, which is sorry, this is not just me reading badly. This is badly written. Which is why she should not offer white opinions on what Black folks create to celebrate themselves. It is not. It has no white context.
Okay, so there's a lot of reviews like that. You're saying that are
this was a 4.5 star review.
Yeah.
This is a this was a 5-star review, and so it's like, why did you give this thing 5 stars if you think this book is garbage? What the fuck is going on?
And you're saying that's a substantial amount of the high reviews.
Yeah. Like here's another review of that. This was 3 stars. I ended up DFNing this book. DFN I think is do not fund. I tried to figure out what DFN meant. I couldn't figure it out immediately. I ended up DFNing this book. A white author and a white narrator both saying the N-word with a hard ER makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. It started out well and seemed to be going through historical viewpoints while challenging white Americans to acknowledge racism as a white problem. But it lost me where it lost me was in the excessive use, mind you, of the N hard ER word and other forms of the N word. I did not make it to the halfway mark, and then I decided it was a massive no. And this was
stars was that? How many stars was that?
3. That was 3 stars. Like for me, that should be 0 stars.
Yeah.
Like what the like?
I had to stop reading halfway through, and I never picked it up again. 3 stars.
I stopped. Oh my good! Like how and this woman, she reads more books than I do. I looked at her reviews. She has 700 book reviews. Like she reads a lot of fucking books. I don't think I've read 700 books in the last 10 years. Not even close. Not even close to that. It's like 3 stars? Are you out of your fucking mind? That should be 0 stars. Like that should be get the fuck out of here. Here's the common reviews. So the common reviews are like, every white person needs to read this book. Here's another one. This should be mandatory reading for all white people. Truly important. And that's the the kind of good reviews you get. They're kind of like 1 word, 2 words. And then you get these bad reviews that are like long-winded, 1,000-word arguments against the book. And they're still like 4 stars, 3 stars.
So what do you make of that?
Well, maybe it's an argument against Goodreads in general. Like, what the fuck are you guys recommending? Like, why are you giving a book 3 stars if you didn't finish reading it because it offended you so much that it sucked? Why do you have a problem? Why do you think a book is worth 3 stars or 4 stars or 5 stars? For me, like, what would you say? Like, if you were doing a rating system, I would say 1 star. Like, I read it and it was so terrible, like I had to put it down. 3 stars is like I read it and it was like hard to get through. It wasn't a good book, but like I felt the content was okay and worth reading. And like 5 stars, like I loved it. It was amazing.
I'd give this book 4 stars.
4 stars. You know what? I would probably give it 3 or 4 stars. Like it's I didn't like reading it, but it was not hard to read.
If you accept the premises, it's sophisticated, it's full-throated, and it is thoughtful.
Yeah, so you know what? Maybe we both agree that it should be 4.5 stars then.
Yeah.
Maybe we both agree with that. But I just feel like there's a lot of people who read it who don't like the book, and they gave it a better... you know what? Maybe I will try that, because I didn't actually really like the book, but I would give it about 3 stars.
Yeah. I mean, that's weird that there's those, like, strange reviews, but... Well, I guess what I would would want to end the discussion of the book on is we talked earlier about we got railroad a bit. I'm interested to listen to this podcast in the end because after that those tech issues, I don't know what the f happened, but I don't really see strong arguments against this other than treading over taboo areas, which I don't see getting shredded over. At
didn't
least
like
anytime
my
soon.
anal bleeding argument?
I mean, I remember your I mean, it wasn't so much of an argument as an analogy, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. This book is going to be very popular, especially in the context of what's going on right now in the world. People are going to like this kind of thinking. They're going to latch onto this. This woman is going to sell millions and millions of copies of this book. This is going to be one of the defining books of this year, if not longer. This is going to be a very, very popular. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Oprah had her on Harpo Network somewhere and was like, "Yes, this."
Yeah, well,
is
she was just
amazing.
on Jimmy Fallon. Was it last night or 2
Oh
nights
my
ago? Yeah.
goodness! Do you have that? Can you pull that up? Like, if we could just play that.
I can pull that up. Do you want to play the whole thing though?
You can play as much of as you want, but like, if you're not gonna play it, just play some of it. The only thing I'll say about this is like, look at how much this woman talks, and look at how much Jimmy Fallon talks. How is this an interview?
Do you want me to play it from the beginning or?
You can start at the beginning. That's fine. It's only like 4 minutes long, right?
Yeah, you know what? And I'll play it at like 2.5 speed or 1.5 speed.
Is it 4 minutes? How long is the whole video?
It's 6 minutes. That's the thing.
Play at 1.5 speed.
Cool.
So we'll bring it down to 4.
All right. I'm starting right now.
Dr. Robin DiAngelo, thank you so much for doing the Tonight Show. I really appreciate it. I know how busy you are, and everyone wants to talk to you right now, so this means a lot to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And thank you so much for having me.
Your book, White Fragility.
I'm not watching this, but I've seen it before.
Why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism.
It's just Jimmy Fallon's like, oh my God, I'm so excited to have you on. This is amazing. I can't believe you're here. This is so fantastic. You're talking about something so important.
And then he's looking. From what I read, it's sold out everywhere as well.
He kind of puts his head to the side of it, and he's like,
yeah. Well, here's what I did. I got it on Kindle.
Ah, okay.
I don't know if you saw this. It went viral online. A flight attendant was reading people on her plane, and some gentleman came on and he was reading your book.
I feel like the whole time.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it actually illustrates several really important points about this. I mean, on the one hand, the story was special because a black woman and a white man had engaged conversation. He talked to her with humility and openness, and that was exceptional. But just
can you imagine
that would be
for 10 seconds that Jimmy Fallon gives a fuck about
when
what's going on in black people's lives?
And I asked the black people kind of rhetorical.
Who thinks that Jimmy Fallon is in tune with what's going on in poor people in New Orleans' lives?
Had that go well for them. Never.
Number two, this guy is such a faker. He's such a piece of shit.
And I'll never forget asking a group, okay,
he's
just give us feedback on
he's a race war profiteer is what he is.
And I'll never forget this black man raising his hand and saying it would be revolutionary.
Oh goodness.
And just take that in. I just want all the white people to just take that in. Revolutionary, that we would receive the feedback with grace, reflect, and seek to change our behavior. That's how difficult we are.
Wow.
That's how big a-holes we are.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, that's not a very tall order.
He's like,
really?
White people are a-holes.
But we can't
Jimmy
get
Fallon's
there from
like,
the current
wow.
paradigm that says only mean people who want to hurt others based on race.
Like all of Jimmy Fallon's friends are white. The only black people he knows are from Saturday Night Live, and they're all loaded out of their fucking minds.
White fragility.
Jimmy Fallon has never spent 10 seconds with a poor black person.
What does it mean? Exactly.
Well, the fragility part is meant to capture how little it takes to cause white people to melt down in defensiveness and unrest. We make it so miserable for black people to talk to us about what they're experiencing from us that most of the time they just don't. It's not worth it. It tends to get worse, not better. And so in that way, white fragility is quite powerful, and it protects the racial status quo.
It's not a complicated argument.
All right, we cannot hear it at all while you're talking, but I don't think we need to play anymore.
Sorry.
Oh no.
So like this woman's argument is so reductive. It's so simple. It's reductio ad absurdum. Like you are racist whether you like it or not. Deal with it, and now buy my book, and my book will teach you to be less racist, and then you can feel better about yourself. I don't have any actual policies that I want to put in play. I don't know how to solve the problem of racism. I don't have any ideas that will bring black people up and put white people down. All I'm going to tell you is you'll feel better. You'll feel good about yourself if you're white and you're worried about racism and you buy my book. If you buy my book, you'll feel less bad about racism. That's what the whole book is. And I could sum that up right there. Like, that is what her ideas are. Do you disagree? Do you agree?
I think I agree. I would just say that there's not really any strong arguments against the things that she says. I think there's a logical consistency to the things that she says. If you accept the foundation, if you accept the foundation, and I don't think that anyone anytime soon with any position of power. The only reason that I even voice a doubt to those foundations is that I don't really have anything to lose. Like, like even if we had like a podcast with like 100,000 listeners, I might be like, you know what, maybe we'll avoid that topic.
Oh my god, this is nonsense. She reminds me of like it's like she's starting a cult. It's like she's a cult leader. She's Jim Jones. She's what's the head of the Scientology guy? L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
She's L. Ron Hubbard, and she's like, you know what a good way to make money is? Start a religion.
Do you think she's like that? I don't think that she's like that. Maybe, but I don't think so.
She's not like the architect, but she's like underwriting the numbers for the architect. She's bought into it.
All right. Well, let's walk away from the White Fragility book for now. If we think of anything else we want to say due to us getting all tripped up on the tech issues, we can come back to it next episode. But I had a couple things to bring up I had one substantial thing, and you said you had some other thing to bring up that you just wanted to talk about this week.
I have. Do you mind if I just take a break? It's been a long cast. Do you mind if I just take like a 2-second break? Give me 1 minute and I'll come back to cast. Is that
okay? Yeah, sure. How about you, if you're going to do that, you talk for 3 seconds while I pull up a song.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? Let's play the intro song again. You know what? I'm just going to pull this up. You do what you got to do. I'm going to play some stuff for the audience, and including this song.
Thanks, Jason. I really appreciate it.
No worries, man. You were good timing for me to fade out the song.
I'm sorry for our listeners. I'm sorry for everyone involved in this. Just a couple tech issues here, unavoidable. We're streaming on 3 hours. Are we in 4 hours?
We're gonna deal with the tech issues later. I'm gonna edit it together for the podcast, but yeah, whatever. What was your topic?
No, so we'll do the grab bag. You should start. I got a good story, but like you start.
Oh, sure. I thought you were about to, but yeah. So we talked previously about the Nova Scotia shooter. This was like a month or so ago. Do you remember talking about that?
I do remember talking about it, but could you refresh my memory?
22 dead, mass shooting in Nova Scotia. It lasted, hours and hours and hours. This guy traveled all over. Now this is not InfoWars that I'm about to share with you. The reporting. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Well, sorry, I'm not ready. So send me the link.
No, don't worry about it. I'm going to read it to you.
Oh, okay.
So this is McLean's headline. Yeah. The Nova Scotia shooter case has hallmarks of an undercover operation. Now we're going to get into the story. This is McLean's reporting. The withdrawal of $475,000 in cash by the man who killed 22 Nova Scotians in April matches the method the RCMP uses to send money to confidential informants and agents, sources say. Gabrielle Wortman, the shooter, who's responsible for a mass killing, the largest mass killing in Canadian history, withdrew the money from a Brinks deposit in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia on March 30th, stashing a carry-all filled with $100 bills in the trunk of his car. According to a source close to police investigation, the money came from a CIBC Intria, a subsidiary of the chartered bank that handles currency transactions. Sources in both banking and the RCMP say the transaction is consistent with how RCMP funnels money to its confidential informants and agents, and is not an option available to private banking customers. The RCMP has repeatedly said that it has no special relationship with Wortman. Court documents show Wortman owned a New Brunswick-registered company called Berkshire Broman, the legal owner of 2 of his vehicles, including one of his police replica cars. Whatever the purpose of that company, there is no public evidence that would have been able to remove that large quantities of cash. Wortman also ran his own denturist business, and there is no reason to believe it also would require him to handle large amounts of cash. If Wortman was an RCMP informant or agent, it could explain why the force appeared to not take action on complaints about his illegal guns and assault on his common-law wife. A Mountie familiar with the techniques used by the force in undercover operations, but not with the details of the investigation of the shooting, says Wortman could not have collected his own money from Brinks as a private citizen. Quote, "There is no way a civilian can just make an arrangement like that," he said in an interview. He added Wortman's transaction is consistent with the Mountie's experience in how the RCMP pays its assets. Quote, "I've worked a number of CI cases over the years, and that's how things go. All the payments are made in cash. To me, that transaction alone proves he has a secret relationship with the force." I can go in further, but what do you think of that so far?
Well, spell it out for me. What's the accusation? That he's a CIA operative? That he's a CSIS operative?
Well, RCMP, yes. And so we're in the middle of COVID right now. I've been with friends on trips. They try to take out over $500. They can't do it.
Yeah.
This guy takes out $500,000.
Yeah, and then what? So what do they think? That he's just like RCMP guy that snapped?
This is McLean's reporting, and then there is no other explanation that anybody can think of.
Connect the dots for me. Why? How does that go to the mass shooting? How does it relate?
Well, we don't know exactly, but it's fascinating that this guy has RCMP replica cars. He's pulling out $500,000 that nobody can explain in any other way other than he was paid by the RCMP. Now, there is... Let me just pull this part of the page up. Oh, no, there's possibly a second one. Yes, so McLean's reported earlier this week that sources say Wortman had social relationships with Hell's Angels and with a neighbor. It's funny, this guy's name's Peter Allen Griffin, who recently finished serving part of a 7-year sentence for drug and firearm offenses linked to La Familia, a Mexican cartel. Sources say Griffin printed the decals on Wortman used on the replica RCMP cruiser that he used in his rampage.
Yeah, but connect the dots for me. What's the
No. That's the thing. We both have the same dots. There is no way for him to withdraw $500,000 from the bank without something crazy going on behind the scenes.
Okay, so he's got the money, he's got the guns, he's related to the Mexican cartel, he's related to the Hell's Angels, he's gang related,
and he seems very, very almost certainly related to the RCMP.
Almost certainly related to the RCMP. He goes out and he shoots how many people in Canada, in Nova Scotia?
Well, he kills 22. I think a lot more were wounded, though. Largest mass shooting in Canadian history.
Yeah, and they're all in... The shooting's all in one place? Where was the shooting?
No, he traveled a bunch. It was throughout Nova Scotia.
So the shootings all in 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? How long did it take?
I think it was like a 12-hour rampage. I think maybe over the course of 2 calendar days.
Okay, so 2 calendar days. He goes out. He goes to one location. He shoots some people. Goes to another location. Shoots some people. Goes to another location.
Yeah, I think he might have burned down some houses too. Yeah.
Burns down some houses. So it's not a. Maybe it's not a lone wolf. Maybe this is a organized hit on something that's going on in Nova Scotia. So what do you think? Drug related, gang related?
I have no idea, but it's in the RCMP's Code of Conduct handbook that we just hit jackpot. We just hit jackpot on the screen, by the way. So everybody watching, take a shot right now. But yeah, for the podcast audience, we got a little a slot machine that plays different GIFs, and we just hit a jackpot on that. Anyways, yeah.
So fitting that we hit jackpot. It was like we connect all the dots, and then boom, jackpot. But we didn't connect anything, so that's fine.
Yeah. What was I just saying? The jackpot.
No, but what's the motive? What happened? What's the real story?
We don't know. So yeah, in the RCMP handbook is that they can lie to us about their connections with confidential informants. So we cannot trust when the RCMP says we have nothing to do with them. We cannot trust that whatsoever. And ex-Mounties and I think current Mounties are saying there's literally no other way he could be withdrawing this money without being connected to the RCMP.
Yeah, all right. So where's the there? What happened? What's going on?
We don't know. Like it's just amazing to me. This is an amazing development.
What was the story before though? Because I can't remember.
The story before was he got into an argument with his wife at a party. He kind of abducted her and she ran away, and he went back to the party and shot it up, and then he just drove around shooting people.
Well, it kind of throws into contention all the conversations that come up about what should we do about gun control? What should we do about gun control?
Well, especially because some of his guns were illegal already.
Yeah. So yes. So I was gonna say that some of his guns. Weren't all of his guns illegal? I think every single gun he had was illegal.
Perhaps.
But if this guy's sponsored by the RCMP,
to the tune of $500,000 in one transaction, who knows how much other money he got?
Yeah. So if he's sponsored by the RCMP, then we need to have an investigation on what the fuck happened. Why did this happen? What's going on? This is not the time for a talk about gun control. This is the time for what the fuck is going on in the RCMP? What are they engaged in? What's going on in our country? And if it's something that's related to the Mexican drug cartel and the Hells Angels, maybe they're in the midst of an ongoing investigation and they don't want to flesh it out right now.
just the little bit that they talked about in that article. There's a neighbor of his that was related to La Familia, and he served time and got out. Like that, and this guy lives next door to him. That's gonna get him one transaction, $500,000. How? I don't know. It just seems like that is.
I live in the Dominican Republic. I've said this before. I feel like this is my Tim Pool thing, my moment where I say this thing over and over and over again. I live in the Dominican Republic, but here we deal with people who sell drugs all the time, and this sounds like drugs to me. This sounds like there's some sort of drug connection through Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia would be a great place to bring drugs into, and a great place to distribute drugs from. It sounds drug related to me.
Yeah, I mean, very, very well could be. It's definitely a mystery now. You said connect the dots. I mean, there's a lot of dots right now that are very interesting, and I don't know how they all connect, but I wanted to bring that up just to tie back to things we've talked to in the past.
Yeah, sounds interesting. I guess we could talk about Nuka Zeus. Nuka Zeus is going nowhere with his career.
Oh, really? Just seems I haven't been paying attention.
Completely stagnant. He's not on any big shows lately.
So Nuka Zeus is a transracial guy. He's well, let's just say he looks white, but he's black. Let's be gracious and frame it that way. We covered him in previous podcasts, but
he's a black guy.
Friend of the show. He's been on the show.
Friend of the show, yeah. His career is not advancing. It's not going. I thought he was going to blow up, and I'm completely wrong about it. He's not going in that direction. It's all kind of like fizzling out. I was wrong about Black Lives Matter. I thought Black Lives Matter was going to go nowhere. So hopefully for Nuka Zeus, friend of the show, hopefully your career goes well. All the best. Are we going to talk about the riots and the protests that are still going on? On?
That was your point about Nuka Zeus? He's going nowhere? That's all you were going to say about Nuka Zeus?
Well, yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. I have nothing that I want to share right now.
All right. So what you want? The riots?
Are we going to talk about the riots and what's going on right now? Like these protests have now spread to Germany, Sweden, Switzerland.
Oh yeah,
France.
No, I mentioned that in the one of the previous podcasts. Across the sea, it's in many major cities in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, everything is not going well, but there's no change. There's no noticeable flare up or anything I think worth talking about, right?
Yeah.
Did you have anything else? Did you have something else in the grab bag? Because I got a story I want to tell.
Yeah, do it. That's the last one.
All right. So a good friend of mine passed away. This is a guy I've known for almost 15 years. And we worked together. I have a charity down here. And the reason I actually came down here was to work on homes for poor people. So anyways, long story short, because there's a long story of this, but I'll do the short version. So my friend Juan passed away 2 days ago, very suddenly, very upset. And, Dominican Republic funeral rituals are a little different from Canadian funerals. Have you been to a lot of funerals in Canada in your lifetime?
No, I think just one.
Oh, really? Okay, so if you're in North America listening to this, if you're white, if you live in a white culture, most funerals are very reserved, and most people when they have funerals, people show up to the funeral home, they're very quiet, they sing a song, they're just kind of respectful, and everyone's kind of worried about, how did you know this guy? Well, I worked with him here, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's quiet and stuff. Dominican funerals are a little different, especially if you're poor. So, Dominican funerals, women are crying out loud, screaming, sobbing. They say things like, "Oh my God, this can't be true. There's no way he's dead. Say he's not dead. Please, please tell me it's a lie." Women express themselves very vocally at funerals, and they go on and on and on. And this wasn't different to my friend's funeral, but what was different was the fact that we're in COVID right now. And so this guy was in a hospital after he had a stroke, and there were people with COVID in the hospital. And so public health came down on us, and they said, "You guys cannot have a proper funeral. You're not allowed to go to the funeral home. You're not allowed to spend hours and hours in there and have hundreds and hundreds of people come to visit this guy. You need to bury him right away." So he died at around noon. They start bringing him back around 6 o'clock. It took them 6 hours to figure out
what do you mean bringing him back?
So, sorry. So I live far away from the place where he died.
I understand. Transporting the body.
Yeah. So they had to transport the body. It's a hour and a half, 2 hour drive from where they had to transport the body. But it took them a while to get the papers and get everything in order to transport him. About 6 hours. So they brought him back here, and I'm with the family, and it's when you're poor and you die here, a lot of people have kind of like an Irish wake. It's like they bring the body into the house, everybody comes and visits, and they all pay their respects, and it can go for days. It can go for 3, 4, 5 days, and the body starts to stink, and they don't use what's the thing they use on dead bodies in Canada? Formaldehyde. They don't use that. They don't prep the body like that. They just put the body in a casket. They bring it down. And so public health showed up, and they were very concerned. They're like, "Guys, you need to have the funeral right away. But they got here close to the time where we're on curfew. And so because it was so close to curfew, we were going to have only about 2 hours before curfew. And they said, okay, fine. You can have the body in the house, and then tomorrow you can bury it, but you know, you got to be civil. You got to take care of things. Don't get too many people there. Keep it under wraps. So this guy, I live in a small town. He's a very prominent member of this town. This guy has worked on homes for his whole life, built tons of people's houses. If this was not during COVID, there probably would have been about 5,000 people that showed up for this funeral. There would have been, you know, 3 or 4 days of mourning. Like, we would have had a big funeral, especially for a small town. Like, politicians would have showed up. Tons of people who were rich and important would have showed up. This guy's a poor guy. He lives in the ghetto. They here they say barrio, but barrio means neighborhood. It just means he lives in the ghetto. He's a poor guy. He lives on the edge of town, whatever, right? So they bring back my friend. It's 6 o'clock. The body goes in the house. The whole house is emptied. They bring the body in. When they bring the body in, there's about 500 people that are at this wake, right? And everyone's outside, and they're all going in the house, and everyone's like, okay, we need to respect the rules. Like, we need to social distance. We need to have masks on. Guys, like, stop breaking the rules. Stop breaking the rules. They try to have some sort of order there. It's not going well. They're trying to make sure that people are far away from each other, that nobody gets sick, this, and that. And it just doesn't go well. Like, tons of people show up. And then the police come around at 8 o'clock, and they're like, okay, everyone go to bed. Curfew. Like, get the fuck out of here. Disperse. Most of the people leave. But there's about 100 people that are like, fuck you, we're not leaving. This is my brother. This is my uncle. This is my godfather. Yeah. Like, you can't make us fucking leave, right? And so the police are basically like not equipped to deal with this problem. And all these people are rowdy, and most of them are men, and most of them are like really upset and drinking. And so the cops kind of say, okay, fine. We're going to make an exception for the curfew. You guys do whatever you got to do. Just don't get COVID. Like, stay away from each other. Follow the rules that we tell you to follow. They didn't follow any of the rules. And they basically, the local store that was like a couple houses down from where this guy lives, they put on music and they started drinking. And they all drank all night. About 100 people. And they had a huge party in this guy's honor. And they were like, fuck, we missed this guy. One last send off. We're going to have the best fucking party ever. This is what he would have wanted. And then at 6 a.m, public health shows up and they're like, okay, this is ridiculous. We need to shut this down now, because if we don't get a handle of this, there's going to be thousands of people that show up to this. This is just in the tiny little neighborhood where he lives, right? And so I get a call at 6 a.m. I don't know any of this has happened. And they're like, hey, come now. We're having the funeral at 6 a.m. And I was like, fuck, I've never been to a funeral at 6 a.m. Like, that is not a thing that happens here, right? So, I show up. I'm thinking, like, it's going to be just me and the family and, like, close people. I show up. There's 150 people there. Most of them are drunk. Most of them have drinks in their hand. Full bottles. Beer in 2 hands, bottles of rum in 2 hands. Everyone's smoking. It's like a big party. People are walking around with boom boxes, like music playing and stuff. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, public health said, if we don't bury this guy now, they're going to bury him for us. They're going to take the body out of here, and they're going to have the funeral without us. So we're going to go have the funeral, right? So, all right. 150 people there. We start going to the cemetery. We walk up, we do the procession, we get there. They got this big open space. It's a big outdoor space. There's a huge podium. They put my friend Juan, they put him on the podium, and he's in this casket. It's got a glass window that you can see into the casket, right? So you can see his face and like his upper body. And then they've got this flap that's below him. The flap can shut, it can open, it can be closed casket, it can be open casket, right? So they put him on the podium. It's closed. And his daughter starts screaming. She's screaming there. And again, so like, this is normal in the Dominican, that if you're related to someone, if you're related to someone who dies, it's normal for you to be screaming and be upset and be like noticeably upset that you're screaming. You're looking at me like you don't understand. Am I not explaining it well? Okay. So she starts screaming and she's like, I need to give my dad one last hug. I need to give my dad one last hug. I need to give my dad one hug. And they're like, no, there's people from public health. They're like, no, we can't open the casket. This guy's been in a hospital where people have COVID. We can't risk the infection. Somebody might get infected. And she just keeps persisting. She just keeps saying, no, we need to do it. We need to do it. We need to do it. And so after about 5 minutes, can you hear all this noise in the background right now?
Yeah, I can hear it. I'm muting my own mic because there's noise here too. Just go on.
Yeah, so she's screaming and screaming and screaming. Oh my goodness. There's like a whole, I can't even hear myself right now. Can you hear me? All right, I'm sorry. There's all right. So she's screaming. And the people from like public health are like, okay, fine. You can give your dad a hug. We're going to open the casket. We're going to open it up for like 10 seconds. And then you give your dad a hug and then we're going to close it. So I'm up there and this is a personal friend of mine. I love this guy. As soon as they open it up, I'm like, okay, I'm going to sneak in this little bottle of booze I have and a pack of cigarettes. I'm just going to like sneak it in there in the casket. And it'll be like, this is your goodbye, man. Like, I love you. I give you this. Soon as they open it up, some woman pushes me out of the way. She opens up a 40 of hard liquor and starts pouring it all over the body. And everybody's like, yeah! These people who are carrying like 2 beers, they had 1 beer for them, 1 beer for Juan. They start pouring it all over his face, like just pouring the fucking booze everywhere. There's like 5, 6 people that are doing this, like pouring booze all over it. People are throwing roses, they're throwing flowers, they're throwing lit cigarettes inside the coffin.
Oh my
being like,
God.
1 more smoke for Juan, 1 more smoke for Juan. We gotta have 1 more smoke. My jaw hits the fucking ground, and I am not easily shocked. Like, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I'm pushed out of the way. Women are fainting and screaming. Like, it is a riot, right? This guy who is in charge of public health is like, stop, we can't do this. This is not right. You need to stop. And this whole time, his daughter is like hanging on to him, like screaming, what's going on? So they finally like calm everyone down. They wrench this daughter off of this father. They shut the casket, right? They shut the fucking, the flap so you can't see through the window. And they're like, guys, stop. We need to calm down. Like, we can't do this. We have to respect the rules. COVID, we're all going to get sick. We're all going to die. And everyone kind of like calms down. They're like, okay. Oh, we're cool. Shut that guy. Get that guy out of here. That guy's too rowdy. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, they all calm each other down. The whole community like calms each other down, right? And everyone's kind of calm and solemn. And then you just hear the daughter again. And she's like, okay, but like, can you open the flap? So like we can at least see through the window. So we can at least look at my father. And they're like, okay, fine. That's a good compromise. We'll open the flap. Now we're just looking at a window. We can see the body. Everyone's going to be calm. And like slowly, one by one, people start coming up and they start pouring drinks on the window. And some people are protesting. They're like, this isn't right. Like, you shouldn't do this. And other people are like, yo, man, this is my boy Juan. Like, I love him. He would want one more drink. And this guy is like red-eyed, like his eyes are fucking blasted red. He goes up to the front of the coffin. He looks at me, and I'm like, just shaking my head. And he looks at me again, looks down, looks at me. I'm like, don't do it. And he takes a fucking full liter that he has, smashes the glass. All of the glass falls in the coffin. Everybody who's there is like, yeah, 1 more drink for Juan. They all start pouring the fucking booze in again. Everyone's going nuts. Lit cigarettes are going in. It's pandemonium. And this guy who works for like public health is like, stop, you can't do this, stop. And he like wrangles the thing shut again. So this like flap shuts over the coffin. It's a wood flap. You can't see him anymore. And he's like, calm down. You guys need to stop. Everyone calms down again. It all comes down again. The daughter, again, she just says, okay, fine. Everyone's calm now. But I'm not going to bury my father covered in broken glass. can we just open the thing and I promise I'll take the glass out and everything will be fine? He's like, no, absolutely not. And she's like, you have to let her do it. And everyone's like, you got to let her do it. There's no way we're burying this guy. And even I'm there. I'm like, look, man, like at this point, I'm like, what's going to happen is going to happen. Like just, he's like, okay, I'm going to open the thing. Everyone's going to be well behaved. And we're just going to take the glass out and then we're going to shut it. Then we're going to bury him. As soon as they open the glass, whoa! Everyone's pouring booze on again. They're going nuts. And this guy like just threw his hands up in the air. He's like, fuck it. Do whatever you guys want to do. It lasted 20 minutes. People pouring booze all over this guy. People throwing lit cigarettes on this guy, putting cigarettes in his mouth, lighting them up. Like
it's desecration at that point. Like,
well, okay, so like, yeah, it is desecration. This
guy's in like 6 inches of like beer, rum, cigarette butts, like broken glass.
Well, so the best, like I know this guy really well, and I was shocked, but my consolation was like, man, if Juan was here right now, he would just look at this and be like, yo, these guys are crazy. He would have like tapped his cigarette pack, pulled out a cigarette, given one to me, given one to himself, lit him up, passed a drink around and be like, yeah, whatever, man. It is what it is. Let them do whatever they want. Like he would not have been mad about this at all. And all his friends who were doing all this nonsense, they were right. Like he would have been like, yeah, man, I'm happy I got a send off like that where everyone's so hype about me and so crazy about me. They were doing this kind of shit. And yeah, it was like a great fucking send off for this guy. But like, that is insanity. That is not like funerals are normally like, at least that I've seen. Yeah. Anyways. Yeah. So that's my story.
That's crazy. Rest in peace, Juan.
Yeah, rest in peace, Juan. I'm actually drinking his favorite drink right now.
What's that?
It's alcohol.
That's good.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So, you know, it was a tough week for me that way, but he's a good person. And I just wanted to get that out of here. Maybe not share that story with all my friends because they might be a little upset. Upset if they'd seen that.
You thought that story was going to be more disturbing than.
Yeah. I thought.
I don't think it was that bad.
Oh, really?
No.
I think a lot of people would look at that story and be like, man, Dominicans are fucking crazy. Is that how they treat their dead?
Mm.
And again, so this is atypical, but it's just like we're in the midst of COVID. People didn't get to have the proper send off that they would normally have. And just everything went ape shit because, you know, all the stars aligned and the craziness just exploded. It hit like a critical mass of craziness over and over and over again. Anyways, what's left on the docket, man? What are we talking about next week?
Fuck. Yeah, well, that's a good question. What are we talking? We got a lot of good options.
Yeah, can we get off black issues for a while?
Yeah, I agree. We didn't even want to do that this episode. Just so many things were up in the air, and we had already talked about possibly covering this book, so that's why we did it.
Yeah, if you're listening and you are in the future somewhere, listen to this out of order. Don't listen to our podcast in order.
Yeah, and talk in chat about what you want to hear, because Andre Nicotina is no longer commenting in the live chat.
Oh shit! I saw Andre Nicotina get mentioned. I think he did a super chat to Revenge of the Cis.
Yeah, I think I've seen him before in like Pod Awful or something too. Yeah.
Andre Nicotina might be a big name in the
donation realm.
Donation,
a guy that we really want on our side. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he seems like an interesting character. You know what? Maybe we should reach out to him. Maybe have him on, see what he thinks about things.
That's true. That's not a bad point.
Yeah. Maybe we should find our only fan and see.
Yo, you gotta stop saying that, man. I mean, because because it's not even true. Like it's fun. It's funny to be
self-deprecation, eh?
Well, yeah, it's funny to be self-deprecating, but like when it's not so far from true, and it's something that I don't know.
It's too hard. It's too close to home.
Not really, man. Because like honestly, we had 2 flop episodes recently. But, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, we've been doing way better than I thought we'd be doing. And people like things that other people are listening to. When you keep on saying we've got one other listener, people are gonna be like, oh, I don't give a shit about this, No, man. Even in our last episodes, like that was like at least 60, 70 views a piece across platforms. Like
yeah. It's growing. But I don't. If we had like 1,000 listeners, I'd be like, yeah, nobody listens to the show. You know what I mean?
Well, and then I would be like, then I wouldn't be so apt to be like, yo, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some good topics lined up. We're gonna get into something. I don't know if you want to tell the fans. We don't really have anything in concrete.
No, I'm not. And don't say fans. It's just listeners, man. Are you a fan of any I'm not a fan of any podcast that I listen to, man. There are no fans that are going to listen to us. There's listeners. They're on the equal plane as us.
Guys, we've got serious behind-the-scenes problems that we need to work out right
now.
There's tons of drama.
On that note, shout out to Egg White. We got Egg White coming out right now with the outro song.
Confirmed
10 dead, reports of 13 dead.
Like, subscribe, hit that like button.
All that.
Up to 20 wounded in what was supposed to be a weapons-free zone.
Yeah.